work session, and that will last from 7 to 7:30. If we're done at 7:30, fine. If we're not, what we'll do is we'll open into the regular meeting, we'll recess out of the regular meeting, back into the work session. I know that's what most of the people are here for, so that's what we're going to do. So at this time, this is just a work session. There'll be no formal votes taken. There's going to be a presentation by Dr. Palestis of the administration, but I am going to ask for a roll call, please.
Mr. Barbarullo?
Here.
Mrs. Piella? Here. Mr. Spindell? Mrs. Franco? Here. Ms. Quackenbush? Here. Mrs. Wallace? Here. Mr. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Rosenberg?
Here.
And Mr. Banta?
Here. Join me in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law is enacted to ensure the right of the public to advance notice of and attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Fairlawn Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof, distributed to the persons on the approved list, posted in the Board of Education Administrative Office, and sent to the Bergen Record and the Star Ledger. The announcement posting for the work session / rescheduled meeting, along with the date, time, and place thereof, was distributed on August 3rd, 2017. Items to be discussed during the work session, during the closed session will be personnel matters, student matters, legal matters, negotiations, and grievances, tactics and techniques utilized to protect public safety and property. The results of these discussions will be made public as soon as possible. Before we start the work session, I just make a brief statement. Since the unprecedented spike in enrollment last fall, this board and administration have been working on plans to alleviate the overcrowding. The interim steps up to this point are in the materials that you've all been privy to and on our website. We are now moving forward with a long-term solution. The presentation tonight will outline the administration's proposal, and the board will discuss it amongst ourselves, and we will then open the floor to the public. A lot of you are new to the process. Some of you have only been to a few meetings to hear about and discuss issues that are particular to you. You have not been privy to all the discussions that we've had on this issue and many others throughout the years. This is not a criticism, it's just an observation. You need to know that there is almost 300 years of education experience on this dais between the board and the administration. This experience is a mix of administration, teaching, business office, and board membership. We have a wealth of knowledge and experience to draw on. We have handled and resolved numerous problems and issues in the past. Those resolutions are not always to the liking of everybody, and making everyone happy has never been the goal of this board. The best interest of the Fairlawn School District has been, is, and will continue to be our goal. That does not mean I'm asking you to take every single thing you say on face value. I'm not asking you to be silent. I'm not asking you to sit back and do nothing. What I'm asking you to do is to listen, evaluate, and discuss all these matters in a calm, logical, analytical way. What I'm asking you is to remember that every person on this dais is committed to this district 100%. That every person wants to do the right thing for the district. That we have all of these years' experience and knowledge, and that this district did not get to be one of the best in New Jersey by accident. That being said, I want to remind everyone, once we get to the public portion of the meeting, and even before, I will not tolerate shouting, interrupting, name-calling, or insults. There'll be ample time for comments and questions as long as everyone remains calm. Okay, at this point, I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Palestis, who's going to make the presentation. Ernie?
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our workshop meeting. What we were going to begin with tonight, and I will be doing during our regular portion of the meeting, is a look at my recommendations in regards to the 5 and 8 configuration. Also, I'd like to introduce Russ Haber, who I can see in the back of the room, who is our consultant who is working with us on this project. Russ was instrumental in completing a transportation analysis for us. So, Gene, would you like me to jump into my recommendations or move forward with Ross at this time?
Why don't you start with yours, Ernie, and we'll talk about it.
Okay, so everyone should have, we have posted on the website recommendations that, of my recommendations in regards to how to deal with our growing enrollment, and I believe we have copies available for everybody. So I began my written recommendations with general background. As Mr. Banta pointed out, everyone is familiar with the fact that we have experienced here in Fair Lawn a very, very significant increase in class sizes in our district population. And we have very, very good data that backs this up. This includes our actual enrollment data, which we keep on a day-to-day basis. Demographic projections, we had input from parents and staff. At board meetings, really going back to last September, when parents first brought to our attention the class sizes. We conducted a housing market, sales trend analysis, and also we looked at functional capacity. So clearly our major issue is that our enrollment currently exceeds the capacities in grades K and 5, and that will soon be the case also in grades 6 and 8. I think it's well documented that we had very, very large class sizes in the elementary schools. And so during the 2016-2017 school year, based on my recommendation, the board moved forward with several steps. We included some general education paraprofessionals. We engaged the second demographer, and I think that speaks well of one of our themes. And our theme as we move forward with the referendum is to look at the concept of due diligence, check all of our facts, go back and recheck them. But we have one demographic report that we did last year. We'll be doing another one in the month of October. We had the adoption of the soft borders policy. We also engaged our architect, who has been working on various programs for us and various concepts. And we had a presentation last school year by our bond counsel and our financial advisors. So during the last school year, we looked at a lot of options, and one of the most frequently discussed was renovating and the expansion of Edison School. Our architect conducted an analysis of every elementary school in the district, and it became clear that expansion at any of the elementary schools was not an option. That was very clear. A report was provided to the public in May of 2017. And so we began to look at Thomas Jefferson School and Memorial School as options for us. And our analysis was that we could move grade 5 students into the middle schools. The middle schools give us an opportunity because both middle schools contain core facilities, and the elementary core facilities would mean gymnasiums, cafeterias, libraries, and those are already at full capacity on the elementary level. So we looked at our district long-range facility plan, we did an examination of debt service, and we came up with various projects that could be included in a referendum. These include elevators in some of our schools, air conditioning at the high school, at the auditorium, and roof replacement. So moving forward from that point, we began to look at configurations. And one configuration we looked at was 5, 6, 7, 8 at each of the middle schools. And the second configuration was 5 and 6 at one middle school, 7, 8 at the other. We finally, as we continued to look at those two different options, the preference of the administrative team was a 5.6 model at Memorial and a 7.8 model at TJ. And our rationale was very clear. We thought that this would be, and continue to think that this would be an excellent opportunity to focus on the needs of students in grades 5 and 6 in a smaller setting, and also in grades 7 and 8 in a way that's developmentally appropriate to their needs. We looked at a uniform curriculum being something that could enhance the entire district, and also our belief is that this would have been able to enhance our programs in special education. During the summer, we looked at curriculum implications, transportation, and then staffing as well. And I did introduce Ross Haber to you. It was our belief that it was important to bring in additional expertise. We brought in Ross, who continued to look at, specifically began to look at the transportation piece. So the research findings were, in the area of transportation, we originally estimated a cost of $200,000 a year. When we moved to a new software platform, it became clear that that cost of $200,000 was actually doubled and would increase to $400,000. With the expertise of Mr. Haber, his projection is that transporting students to Memorial and TJ could reach a level of $750,000 per year. When I heard that number and that analysis, I became alarmed because it's important for the public and the board to understand that we still operate in an environment of a cap. Our cap is 2%. Certainly spending $750,000 on transportation would eat up a significant amount of the cap. What that means is that as we continue to grow, if we were spending $750,000 a year on transportation, we would not be able to hire the staff that we needed to operate the middle schools on the level that we wanted. So this new information about transportation costs was very, very significant. And this changed my recommendation. Originally, we were looking at 5 and 6 at Memorial and 7 and 8. And as a result of that information, it's my analysis that the best model for us would be grades 5, 6, 7, 8 at Memorial and 5, 6, 7, 8 at TJ. For us, this would mean we would not be incurring the $750,000 transportation cost. It would eliminate the need to transport students across town. It would maintain neighborhood middle schools, and at the same time maintain class sizes. So we looked at instructional organizational options, and we will continue to do so. So it's very important for the public to understand that in any referendum, it is broken down into stages. We are at a very early stage in which the goal tonight is to consider the configuration piece. What that means for us in the future is that we will also then look at the educational component of it. But we looked at a number of structures. One of the structures could be 5, 6, 7, 8, as I said. I suggested that we take a look at the system called a house system, which is typical in middle schools. And a house system means that what we would do in a middle school that has grades 5 and 6 is keep grades 5 and 6 together as much as possible in the house, and grades 7 and 8 students in another house. There would be an administrator in charge of each of the houses, with the building principal providing general oversight, much like we do now at the high school. And so a 5, 6, 7, 8 middle school at Memorial and a 5, 6, 7, 8 middle school at TJ, in effect, would establish a school within a school. That's one of the things that we would very, very much like to look at. A good organization to touch base with is the National Middle School Association. The House concept means greater individualization for students. So when I made my recommendation, what I was trying to do, and I think we've done here, is take the best components of the 5, 6, 7, 8 model that we were looking at and build that into a 5, 6, 7, 8 model. And using a house system, using middle school teams would enable us to do that. So for example, in a house system, there would be time built into the schedules so that teachers can discuss individual students, can meet with the nurse, can meet with child study teams, can meet with our 504 team. We are also looking at a concept called advisory, which means that individual students would get significant support from the staff. So I want to emphasize that we began the process by looking at various models, and I was a believer in the concept of 5, 6 at Memorial, 7, 8 at TJ. At this point, however, it's my recommendation that we no longer pursue that based on the increase of transportation costs. The transportation cost issue is significant for us. So we have begun to research the schools through Mr. Havers that
Ernie, 1 second.
currently have 5, 6, 7, 8
But
in middle school.
Ernie, 1 second, please. Whoever has the selfie stick on that chair, maybe they could move it so this lady could sit down?
We're trying to bring some more.
Put some back there, yeah. I want to make sure that people get seats over there. 1 second, Ernie, we're just getting some more chairs. All right. Natalie, thank you. Ernie, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haber has designed the survey that has already gone out to 40 other school districts that have the 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration. We also want to make sure as we move forward, as I mentioned previously, that we look at this referendum concept and break it up into manageable chunks in which we are also reaching out to the school community. One of our desires is to develop a survey for parents to get a sense of the kind of configuration that they would like to see with their 5th grade students. And we also want to get involved with staff. I have meetings with our association leadership already set up. So in summary, my recommendation to the Board of Education and community is that we create a 5, 6, 7, 8 middle school at Memorial and a 5, 6, 7, 8 middle school at TJ. The cost to the taxpayers we are continuing to explore, and that would be the subject of continued deliberations with the Board of Education at a public meeting. So I went through this quickly because I know you have copies of it, but I wanted to give you a summary that what I'm proud of is that the administrative team and the board keeps looking at this in the various stages that exist. So we have a second demographer. We brought on Mr. Haber. As we move forward, we will continue to bring his expertise into the fold. This is a recommendation that I strongly support. I believe that the transportation issue, in my mind, is a game changer, and we need to move forward with 5, 6, 7, 8 at Memorial and 5, 6, 7, 8 at TJ. And so that's a brief summary, and I leave you with my written recommendations.
Okay, Ernie, we can turn it over to Ross since we're working on it.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody. Just quick on my own background, okay? I was brought on about 4 weeks ago just about, to take a look at different components of the referendum, see if I can help the district in its approach to presenting it to the public. Just so you know, I'm a 20-year principal. I'm a retired school principal, so I bring to all of this is an education background. I don't bring a strict statistical background. I just bring the sum total of all of that. And I think it's kind of important when a consultant comes in that he looks at the educational benefits of these kinds of things. Well, anyway, when they brought me on board, the first thing we talked about at one of the meetings was transportation. And because this is not a transported school district, very, very few kids ride buses, and so that was going to be a big change. So the first question I asked was about how many kids would need to be transported if you went to the split school arrangement. And the number I got, based on current enrollment, was about 400. And I asked what were the kind of budget numbers you were looking at for transportation. I think at first it was somewhere around 200,000, 400,000, something like that. Well, I said, well, I don't know how you transport 400 kids on 54 passenger buses and only need, on $200,000, that would get you maybe 3 contracted buses and maybe purchase 2 purchase buses, because the last two buses that were purchased, is that me? Yeah, it is.
No, it's Mary.
I'm getting feedback. Okay. Anyway, the last 2 buses this district purchased, 54 passenger buses, were each in excess of $100,000. Okay, so again, how do you transport 400 kids on 2 additional buses, and how do you transport 400 kids on 3 contracted buses? So I went in and I did an assessment of transportation, and I looked at it in 2 ways. The first was, what if you went out? What would it cost to go out into contracting? What would the cost be? Now, for 400 students. I remember New Jersey law limits you to 54 passenger buses. Other states have 60s and 80s. New Jersey, for whatever reason, limits you to 54. 54 passenger buses, especially with kids in 7th and 8th grades, you're not going to load them to capacity. They'll be just too crowded, and the routes would be too long. So my estimate was, to do this, you would need 10 buses. And remember, your enrollment is growing. So then I said, okay, so 10 buses, the average contract cost in New Jersey is about $75,000 a bus. It could be as low as 68, could be high as 80. You will always be on the upper end of the bid scale because you offer contractors a very narrow window. Contractors need to use buses more than once. So if you do something where you have only an hour window of transportation, that takes a lot of opportunities away from contractors. Therefore, to make that up, they're going to charge you the upper end of the scale. So that $750,000 would become $800,000. Remember, that's an expenditure every year. And there are other issues with that also. Then we looked at the notion of purchasing 10 buses. So I used an average price in the state. A fully equipped bus, the Mercedes-Benz bus would cost you about $101,000. But on average, an average equipped 54 passenger bus is about $90,000. So I kind of use that figure. So we're talking in approximately $900,000 purchase. And remember, that would get you in the first year. And that would be the price in the first year. Remember, you've got a lot of other expenses with buses. You've got operating expenses, you've got maintenance expenses. You currently share the maintenance facility with the municipality, but the problem with that is that when you start having a fleet of 47 buses, you own 37 now, 47 buses put you in the bus business. You need to contract real services for those. So that becomes very, very expensive. Then we have insurance, okay? And then the issue of drivers. There's a huge driver shortage in the state of New Jersey. So getting drivers in, especially drivers that you would be comfortable with, drivers that you can control, drivers that have good records, very difficult to get. Bergen County, people making $23 an hour as a full-time job probably can't afford to live in Bergen County. So again, you're bringing in people from the outside. So labor costs get astronomical. You've got insurance costs. And now, let's take it one step further. When you get into transportation, you've got a whole other layer of issues for your building principals. As a high school principal, if I tell you that 35% of my discipline problems were from transportation, that's just reality, okay? So again, then another thing we looked at, I was asked if what if we tiered the two schools? In other words, put them on two different time levels? Almost impossible. Well, what would happen? Let's say you're the parent with an elementary school kid, a 5th grader, and an 8th grader. It's a real problem, and you know, so I wanted to kind of give a broad picture of all the problems that I've seen over the years, all the costs that I've seen over the years. And I'm not, this is no evaluation on which is a better educational organizational structure. I've seen very successful split schools. If you want split schools, I've also seen extraordinarily successful 5-8 schools. So this is strictly where you want to put your money, where you want to put your efforts, where you want to put your what you have in the community. So it seemed to me that that made sense not to get into the transportation business, have the 2 middle schools as 5-8, and that was our recommendation back to the committee. Okay, so that's it. And any questions, I'm certainly open to.
All right, board members, questions of either Dr. Palestis or Ross? I think that's all right. Board members, questions, comments? Okay.
General comment.
Okay, all right, so guys, we have 1 minute. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Technically, we have to open in a recess, so I'm going to open a public meeting. I have questions. Okay, let me just do this and then have a roll call, please.
Mr. Barbarulo?
Here.
Mr. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Rosenberg?
Here.
Mr. Spindell? Mrs. Franco? Mrs. Piella? Mrs. Wallace? Ms. Quackenbush? Here. And Mr. Van.
Here. All right, may I have a motion to recess back into the work session?
So moved. Second.
Aye.
All right. Wait, I think that's it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Jeffrey?
Okay. You know, I continue to be a proponent of 5, 6, 7, 8. I do understand these costs, but I do have some questions. Beginning with, thank you, Mr. Banta, for your kind words in the beginning. But you also mentioned not privy to, all the conversations I have to, and I don't feel like I've been part of all those conversations to really make an informed opinion tonight with a short work session. I am 20 of those years that you speak of the 300 of those educators here, 21 actually now. We talked about, as you mentioned, the best interest of children. This board has, -1 respectfully, has agreed already that what is in the best interest of our children is to do a 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration, and our job is to do what's best for children. I'll reflect on another time. Remember, we were in Westmoreland School, and we had a booklet of all the new configurations that we can go to, and they only had to do with Edison School. And we looked at that, and the whole idea of K-4 and that any other configuration, that didn't exist at all. We were this close to not even talking about middle schools yet. But we had the opportunity as board members over a certain amount of time to ruminate and to think about what we wanted to do. And that time allowed the board to come up with a more viable solution that is more cost effective and a better long-term solution. I'm proposing that we do the same thing now. I know that we are on a timeline for a referendum, and there are only dates that we could have, but doing the wrong thing, making the wrong decision will irreparably change this town forever. So this is an ominous choice that we're making. So I encourage us to take a step back again, like we did last time, and give ourselves the opportunity to come up with some solutions so we can get back to what we said in our own admittance, in the superintendent's admittance and the assistant superintendents, that the 5, 6, 7, 8 is in fact best for children. I do have some other questions. In terms of the $750,000, there are other costs. You mentioned that for each middle school there would be an administrator for each house. So is that adding 2 administrators per building, meaning give or take like about $175,000, $200,000 of principal times 4, which means we'd be paying $800,000 at least. I'd like to know how that compares with the cost of adding extra guidance counselors, what that's going to cost the school district, and if that was made into the equation with what equals more and how nominal that $750,000 become in those terms, and I'll just keep going here, and then you can address them how you see fit. I'm concerned, of course, with like I know with so many other people, the idea of a 5th grader with an 8th grader, no matter what you do with houses, the gym is the same. Are they in band and chorus together? Are they in, if we have intramural athletics, are they there together? Are they in lunchrooms together? How about discipline codes? Where is, at least I won't speak for everyone, where's my guarantee when I vote for this that 5th grader is under a reasonable discipline code and a set of rules, regulations, and expectations? How do I know that it's going to be the same for them? Because right now, for a 6th grader and an 8th grader, they're not the same. And at least in my humble opinion, again, 21 years in the business, I do think they should be different, but they're not. So where's the guarantee that that's going to happen? And we haven't seen any of those guarantees. We don't know what this is going to look like. So I'm extremely concerned. Again, we said that 5, 6, 7, 8 is better for kids, and we're falling back on something that we're admitting is maybe not as good. And I need those things addressed specifically, and I need those guarantees. Or there's no way I can vote to put 5th graders with 8th graders without those guarantees. And I know that there are other successful schools. I've heard all about them. I've read all the links, well, not all, many of the links that were sent through Facebook. But to me, and I know everyone's gone nuts because, especially people in this room, because I go with my instinct, but you know what? Every time I discipline my kid, I don't look it up on the internet what I'm supposed to be doing. When you were in education for 21 years, and go ahead, you can post it on Facebook, go ahead. When you've been in education for 21 years, you have instinct that is well developed, and you know what is right and you know what is wrong. This is wrong on so many levels. So,
Okay.
I'll have more later.
But I have my hand up. Okay, wait a minute. Mike had his hand up first, which I didn't see. Ernie, do you want to speak to Jeff's points first?
I can do that.
Okay.
What I think probably will be better organization of it. So, and I tried to write down, Jeff, your comments. If I missed any, let me know.
Sure.
So in the configuration that I'm recommending, which is 5, 6, 7, 8 Memorial and 5, 6, 7, 8 at TJ, there would be one administrator at each of those schools. And one of the administrators would be in charge of a house. Now, it's very, very important to understand, I mentioned during my comments several minutes ago, that the referendum, any referendum proceeds in stages, and we are at the preliminary stage in which we are looking at configuration. Obviously, there's additional work that needs to be done, and there is no program that has been set in place, and that's why we will be surveying parents and surveying staff. But I can tell you that as we look at the advantage of using a house system, what the house system does is it provides in a smaller group setting 5th and 6th graders in one portion of the building and 7th and 8th graders in another portion of the building. Now, will they ever be in the same hallways together? Of course. Will they have classes together? I doubt that very, very much. But that's all of those questions need to take place in the design stage of it. The advantage of having a grade 5 and 6 in a house is that under the guidance of an administrator, the staff can develop appropriate grade level disciplinary and classroom management strategies. So what I have attempted to do here in the recommendation is to take the advantages of the model that we were looking at, be realistic and understanding the $750,000 busing cost, and eliminate the busing cost, take the advantages of the model we were looking at and build that into a 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration. And that's one of the reasons we're surveying the 40 schools in our area that still use that, and will involve parents, board members, and teachers as we move forward with the program implications.
I'm raising my hand.
I know.
There were still just questions unanswered again. It does say here that there would be an administrator for each house. It seems that though we will have to hire more guidance counselors and more administrators then. And I want to know what that equals. And are you saying that we're not going to be hiring more people, or we are hiring more people? Because at the end,
And that needs to be, I mean, my recommendation, if we move to the House, would include administrators. Moving forward with guidance is going to be based on the program. So, for example, and we have not developed a program, if fifth graders moved into the middle schools and were maintained in a traditional fifth grade homeroom as they are now, then that changes the structure of it. And as a result of that, we possibly would not incur some of the other programs, but it's too early to make, make that determination.
So if it's too early, it seems that it's still possible that this configuration can cost more than the $750,000. Because if we do add those people, it will at least be nominal. I know I'm taking time. I know other people are want to raise their hand. So I just want to leave that out there for us to consider, that we may be walking into the same amount of money, possibly.
Okay, Mike, then Mary, and Mark, and Ron. Mike.
All right, so I was one of the proponents for the 5, 6, 7, 8. When I first heard of it, I jumped on board on the educational piece. I work in a 5 to 8 middle school, so I live this every day except the summer. So I see it, and I've worked and I've taught at every level in that middle school. I've taught 5th graders and I've taught 8th graders. As I've missed a couple meetings, and I apologize for that. Like the first time I missed like meetings in a row, and it was when we were talking about this. As things have developed, this transportation piece is more than just the cost of transportation, okay? I'm listening to what a lot of people are saying, which is the burden of transporting all the way to Memorial. And I don't think TJ's the problem, because TJ is somewhat in the middle of town. But Memorial is at the corner of the town. It's at the corner of the town. There's no doubt about it. You can't go any further any further in town without the Memorial. And the burden is there. Now, I also want to say that I was really not aware that we totally abandoned in this district houses and teams, because a true middle school is team teaching, and I honestly wasn't aware of that. Now, Memorial is a funny animal, because there was only one team there or one house there, but TJ had 2 full teams of teachers. And I kind of can't fathom that we went away from that. So, moving forward, I think if you have a 5-6 house and a 7-8 house, that first of all, that's good for kids, and I definitely would keep that going. And this is what my thinking. 5th and 6th, and this was my thinking all along, as far as why I agreed with the 5-6 going to Memorial and the 7-8 going to TJ. 5th and 6th graders have much different needs than 7th and 8th graders. I don't have a problem with them being in the same school. There is plenty and plenty of schools that have K-8 configurations. Matter of fact, it's even suggested that a K-8 configuration is a positive thing. So I'm not that concerned about the 5 to 8. And even in my school in Hillsdale, which I don't necessarily think we separate them maybe as much as we should. We do have teams and everything else, and they are separated for a lot of things, certainly the lunches and stuff like that. The 5th and 6th graders definitely have an identity. 7th and 8th graders definitely have an identity. What happens sometimes is I think the 7th and 8th graders have more developmental issues in adolescence. And what happens in a 5, 6, 7, 8 school sometimes is the 7th and 8th grade actually takes up all the energy kind of the administration. And the 5th and 6th graders may not get everything that they could to better them, to better the 5th and 6th grade. I think Dr. Palestis' idea of having an administrator for the 5th and 6th grade and a house for 5th and 6th grade and a house for 7th and 8th grade, I think that definitely alleviates that problem for me. It alleviates the problem for me because I know that part of it, and the disciplinary code would be, like in my school, the disciplinary code is different for the 7th and 8th grade. As far as I could tell, I did some research. Old Tappan, Hillsdale, Paramus, Closter are all schools that have a 5 to 8 configuration, and I'm sure there's more. There's 74 school districts in Bergen County. So there are schools to look at. I think I'm for the 5 to 8 configuration. I think the 5, 6, 7, 8 just it wouldn't work because of the cost of transportation and also the other problems that deal with transportation. And maybe I agreed with it before, but in retrospect, I don't necessarily agree with it now.
Great, thank you. Mary, you're up.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to speak from over 30 years in education. Summer during the room, I may have taught. I may have taught some of your children. I taught at Montclair University in the education department. So I'd like to differ with Jeff Klein in a few items, and I'd like to concur and say that I support just about everything that Mike said. First, in the middle school, I would like to remind people that years ago, to the middle school, Methodist Middle School, that people were brought in to train us, and I was one of the very first of the teachers. We had a first house, 8th grade house of the night. We were trained, and we would have workshops on how to work with a true middle school concept, and always cycle here with this clearly that your daughter is in a true middle school house concept. As we had different meetings discussing all of this, I was enthused, yes, about 5, 6, and a 7, 8. But I was asked by a member of the public which I preferred, and I said that at this point it was a necessity for us to keep an open mind, that there were many things that we have to consider in which of the configurations we will finally accept. But there's no configuration that's bad for children. I went to a K-8. Probably most of you in the room went to a K-8. Then there were times when we had a middle school, or I should say at that time a junior high school, that was 7, 8, 9. And a high school that was 10, 11, 12. of the citizens of this town. So I don't think that we should be quite so upset about which configuration quote wins. This is not an issue of winning. This is not an issue that the configuration I like should win or the configuration that you like should win, because our administration will do everything possible to make whichever configuration we ultimately choose work for our children. But there are money issues to contend with. And if the administration, who has put so much time and effort into apprising all of us of what all of their research has shown us, if they have put that time and effort into showing us that there are monetary issues here, I think we have to take a very serious step to give some credence to what these professional people, and they're all highly professional people that work for us, what their recommendations are. So, sometimes we all get to the point where we all think that we're all experts. But I'm not, after 40 years of being in education, necessarily an expert on every aspect of education. Now, what can I say? Simply because I have a child who is going to go to school, I'm an expert in education. Just as I can't say because I have a faucet, I'm an expert plumber. These are things that we have to listen to our professionals, raise what they say, have our own input, listen to the public, do all of that, but in the end, I do not feel that we can err for our children, because whatever is ultimately decided, you and I know, everybody in this room is going to work like the chickens to make it be the best possible choice for our children. And that's what I think we have to keep reminding ourselves. We have always worked to make whatever we have the best possible thing it can be. I'm done.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Ron, going on there. Oh, I'm sorry. I crossed you off already.
I just wanted to thank everyone who worked so diligently on tonight's recommendation that you've given with us, and I'll be brief in my statements. I currently am a proponent of the 5 through 8 design. However, I agree with Jeff. I think that there are too many aspects of what we're discussing tonight that are in the unknown area, and to make a decision tonight would not be in the best interest of the district. I would think that when Ernie and the other central office administrators were putting this recommendation together, that there would have been some kind of cost analysis done to compare the 5 through 8 with the transportation debacle. So I'm asking Ernie, what were the costs for the added administrators and other items that you may have thought necessary to make this recommendation fly with us? Because I don't want to end up with egg on my face in another month from now with someone saying, well, we made an error in transportation, we've now made another error because now it's going to cost $1 million rather than the $750,000. So what were those basic costs that you came up with to compare with the transportation?
If we looked at the cost of 2 assistant principals and we added salaries and benefits, but Lisa, you can help with the general
Right.
examination of that?
The estimate, because we don't have the salary
Estimate of
guide.
that?
Yeah, for 2021 or whatever this might, would be about $340, $350 for 2 additional administrators. That's salary and benefits.
Looking past the administrators, as Jeff was saying, what other components would we be implementing in this system to make it go.
See, I think that's driven by the program.
So
I don't know
what-
if we know exactly what we need just yet.
Well, that's why I'm saying there are uncertainties here. So are we going to investigate what kind of programs we're going to implement? Will there be changes from the current 6, 7, and 8 that we have to incorporate the 5, 6, 7, and 8? I mean, have all of these things really been looked into so that we can, when we come and take a vote on it, we can say, yeah, I feel I'm assured that this is basically what it's going to be.
I don't think all.
And again, as I had mentioned previously, if we, I cut out for a minute, if we look at grade 5 in the configuration that it currently exists, and grade 5 is led by the current teachers in a self-contained format, that would reduce program costs. But we have not made that decision yet, and our goal is to survey parents, survey as well the staff members. So I think it's important, Mark, you bring up a good point, to understand that we have a combination of factors that always occurs when there is a referendum, and one of them is, if we look at the fact that we are growing every year, no matter what configuration we choose for Fairlawn, we will have increases in staff costs because we will have more students. And I think that that needs to be clear in everyone's mind. In terms of, do we need more guidance counselors? That depends on the configuration. If the configuration and the program is grade 5 in basically a self-contained setting, similar to what they have now in their elementary, our grade 5 students do not have guidance counselors right now. The guidance counselors we have is 6, 7, 8. But as I know it sounds frustrating for me to keep repeating the same thing, but the referendum comes in stages. We need to be looking at, if we are able to get through the configuration conversation, we need to be looking at the finance piece, and by that I mean the bonding, the referendum, pure referendum building costs, and then we need to be looking at staffing costs as well.
I'll end on this statement. If you're saying that there's going to be a necessity to send out a survey to parents, should we not wait for the survey to be completed to get a response before we go through with this? Or do you feel that it's not necessary?
I think the survey is to get the sense of the parent as to what the program itself would look like. The configuration from an architectural point of view is not going to be dependent on really any vast changes in the survey that comes from either parents or from teachers. I mean, our consultations with the architect have been pretty clear in that the architect needs to know whether it's what the building is going to look like. But I think that it's important to understand, if we had a referendum that passed this school year, we're still 3 years out. And what that means, 3 years away from occupying the building. That provides to us a significant amount of time to work on our staffing needs and other curriculum needs. I do think, however, that involving parents in the survey to get their ideas of what a 5th grade should look like is wise. We should be listening to parents, and we should also be consulting with our staff. And we have a very, very well-qualified group of teachers. I want to know what they think as well.
Thank you.
First of all, like Mike said, I liked your idea. I never gave up on 5 to 8, and I also never gave up on Edison. Okay, I just didn't think Edison was the solving problems. What the problem is. I think this thing is in a couple stages. I think Ernie already said it. The referendum is very important that we can get this referendum passed, because the biggest problem we have right now, we have no space. And if we don't pass the referendum to get more space, we're going to be in a big problem, because where are we going to put the kids? So that's something that we have to get first. Then I agree, Mark and Jeff, I agree. I have the same questions. I mean, as far as it comparing to the transportation costs, after we got this, and I'm the buildings grounds chairperson, so I got this from Brooke, along with our committee, it's a logistic nightmare, okay? You know, it's not just a matter of cost. If you're adding 10 more buses, we barely have enough room right now to store 37 buses. So where are we putting the buses? That's another problem, okay? And like Ross said, and I know this for a fact, talked to other people in other districts, there's a big bus driver shortage. So who are we getting in? And I gotta tell you something, I'm a big proponent who's on there and driving these children, and understanding them and paying attention to them. I think that regardless of what happens, we're still eventually gonna have to add more administration, teachers and stuff, because we have more kids. So you're gonna need that. So for me, I would make a decision as far as, I like the idea of a survey. I think the community should be, I wanna hear the entire community and what they have to say. I think there's a bunch of things I'd like to see on that survey, so I hope Ernie discusses it with us. But I have a lot of other questions and costs. But again, you know, it goes back to my years on the board. You know, when it comes to buildings and grounds issues, sometimes I've had people years ago when we did the new seats in the auditorium in high school, and somebody came up to me and said, why would we spend $90,000 on brand new seats and we can hire 2 more teachers? But when you add, and they weren't necessary at that time, by the way, the teachers, but when you add the cost and the benefits over a period, it outweighed it. But this is something we needed because you have to maintain your facilities. The last thing we want is somebody falling in a chair, you know, getting severely hurt, God forbid, and suing the school district. That hurts too. So you have to maintain your facilities. I think we do a great job in this district of maintaining our buildings. They're kept clean. We stay on top of it. The other thing with the referendum is that if you do some of the long-range facility plans, you're freeing up more money for more administration, because you don't have to worry about doing those routes 3 years from now, because it's already built into the referendum. Again, it goes back to the referendum of, and we've talked to the bond council. I happened not to be at that meeting that night, but I did get information. I had a previous engagement, where we want to keep it minimal to the taxpayers. I've had discussion with certain people about what it could look like, what we've done with our budget over the last 10 years, and it's manageable. And I say that manageable because I like to compare it to basic things that people buy every day, what they'll be paying over a year for the benefit of our children. So to me, the only thing I'm looking at right now is I want more information, and I have no problem with the 5 to 8. I actually would even, I mean, I know cost-wise, I've even thought about if you made this, we're able to convert this with the board moving or getting space, because there's a lot in this building, especially special ed kids are the most important thing to me. I don't want to disrupt them. But you could even free up more space, okay, with taking kindergarten classes out. Because as I know, I think I was told in June 15th, we already had 311 children registered for kindergarten. That was June 11th. I don't even know what we have right now. I haven't talked to Ernie or the central office. So we see it's growing, and it's going to continue to grow. And again, we are benefit of a good school system. So, you know, but if the school system starts going down, everything else goes down with it. So I have a lot of questions like Jeff does and like Mark, but I think the referendum is very important, because if you do not pass it, and we need to, yes, a plumber will explain it to you. If somebody made a comment about that, how a plumber is going to educate us. I'm a pretty educated person, if anybody wants to talk to me personally. Because that one I did take personally, okay? You can say anything else about me, don't insult me what I do for a living. You're all going to need me sometime. Okay, okay, I'll remember that. But the point is that if we don't get the space, we are in a bad situation. I got just one last thing. I grew up in Fort Lee, and they ran into the same problem. They were so overcrowded, and they knocked down 3 referendums. They were at a point, they almost had to transfer kids out of the district. That's where they were at. And luckily, the last referendum passed, and they just started all their construction on there. So it's really, really vital. And again, I think of the children first, and I think of the taxpayers next, because I don't want to see people leave this town because the taxes are high. And that's very important. But I still need a lot more information of the whole configuration of the 5th to 8th grade.
Cindy.
One of the things that I like about the board is the amount of differences that we all bring to the table. If
sitting here with lawyers, a lot of educators, tradesmen, and a secretary. And I listen to what everybody says. And I listen to the administration because that's where their expertise is. And as well as the educators that sit around this table. I was very excited about the 5, 6, 7, 8. I thought it was a good concept. A lot of people said, you know, hardly any schools have it. Well, one of the great things about Fair Lawn that a lot of districts don't have are 2 middle schools. So if other districts did have 2 middle schools, I'm not so sure that they wouldn't be going with that. But if they only have 1 middle school, then they're contained to what their plan is going to be. So I was on board with the 5, 6, 7, 8. And as a board, we all thought that that was the way that we wanted to go. And then we once again handed it over to the administration to do the research, to bring it back to us to see how we could move forward with what the vision of the board was at the time when we discussed it. And now the transportation issue has come in. I think it's more than cost of transportation that concerns me. So I was like, okay, maybe we can't do the 5, 6, 7, 8. However, we do have the 2 middle schools, and I think that the additions that are going to go on the middle school, we will be able to almost incorporate that 5, 6, 7, 8 strategy, which is, I heard a lot of what Dr. Palestis was envisioning tonight was that 5, 6, 7, 8 mentality, but a 5, 6, 7, 8 school. So they'd be getting the 5, 6 mentality, but staying in their home-based school, which now alleviates the transportation. I think it's a work in progress. I agree. I don't think that we can, because the referendum has dead set deadlines, I think a decision does have to be made. And I'm willing to vote on it tonight. I may be outvoted, and then we go back to the table, but that's what it is all about. I think it's very crucial that we move forward because we have to have a plan before we have a curriculum. You can't have curriculum before the plan. If we don't know what we're doing, we could sit there all day long with curriculum, but if we don't know what we're doing with the buildings, I don't see how it's going to work.
I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 all the way. I did vote for the 5, 6/7, 8 when all other board members voted for it because, you know, in my mind, we're a team, and I wasn't going to not, push forward to have the referendum or whatever choice that we would make. But I do have to say that I'm happy. Not that the buses cost so much, but I'm happy that that you came up with this idea of putting the 5, 6, and 7, 8 sort of separately back to the house idea, which is the middle school thing, which was our middle school thing for many years. And I know that there's a lot of changes based on the size of the classes, how many rotations and how many kids fit in a class, and there's so many, intimate details that go into these things. I just wanted to mention the potentially awesome changes to the elementary schools because people are sort of forgetting that. Once the 5th grade is out of the elementary school, no matter how we configure the middle schools, it's going to free up space and time. I think the costs of the teaching staff, I remember when we opened TJ, the teachers were opted, to move to TJ or not, if they wanted to stay in the elementary setting, or choices were made by the whole staff at the different elementary schools, and that's how we seated the teachers into TJ. And I think that worked very well. There were several teachers that went up there that said it was the best thing they ever did, and I have a few in my head that actually I had conversations with about that. Personally, I would like to say that I would rather see the monies spent on pupil contact people than buses. I think there's a huge need. We've spoken about having guidance at elementary schools. That's where a lot of schools are going. We don't currently have that. We have principals that deal with those types of issues. But I do see that that is becoming, I know we just made, or we will be making contacts with companies that do that, and I can see where there's a need for those types of services. But I also remember when TJ was open and there were 600 kids, and Memorial, of course, was open already, and they had about half the students that TJ had. At that time, the government had penalties for administrative ratios, and we worked through a committee that I was on with, I think, Mr. Schechter back in the day. We worked to get to figure out a way to get somebody in the middle school that wouldn't be part of the box that was administrative, and we hired a guidance counselor as a disciplinarian. So I think that there might be, if administratively we need additional people, I think there might be other ways to fill those positions that would be maybe even a little bit less costly and still serve the purpose that we needed to serve at what would be the new middle school configuration. So I think that you have time to figure that stuff out, and I think that like you, I think that the vote should be taken tonight, because you could always make a change after you want to build the building. No matter what, you want to build the building. So I think that the configuration of the building, where this could be the best choice. I think that the idea of starting the process to build the building might be the smartest thing that we do. So.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
I agree with you, Elise. We have to we have to work on the building, because the schools are overcrowded. And once we see the numbers for this year, we're going to find out there's even more children that even registered this year like last year. So we really need space for children. Children cannot be in classrooms with 30 kids. They just cannot be in those protected classrooms. It's not good for them, or older than 25. So we have to start working on finding the space, because it's only going to get. You see how many houses are for sale in Fairlawn, and there are younger people moving in. So you know that there's going to be an increase, and we have to get room for these children. And education is important. We build the school, and then see what we need to do to make the school the best. Fairlawn is always progressive, so they're going to do what's best for the children, and it's going to be a model probably for other school districts. I think.
Yeah. Just to explain to the audience and everyone who's listening out there, obviously I'm beat on this. So I want to explain that you don't, as my stepfather used to say, throw out the baby with the bathwater. The space is an issue. But please don't think that me nor anyone else on this board who agrees with me is going to abandon the things that are important in terms of putting those grades together. And that will be, and I say this with a wink and a smile, looking at our assistant superintendents, they'll be holding their feet to the proverbial fire in making sure that we get those guarantees and that we're comfortable with how this is going to work, that it is still not a typical 5 to 8, that we are, in fact, as Ms. Piela says, progressive. With that being said, I want to just give everyone a little forewarning, and it's something I heard earlier today. Going back on the fact that, and this is the thinking that fears me, when anyone says that it's okay to do it this way because we did it in the past and everybody or all were okay. We don't know that. Do we all know? Can we guarantee that every kid was always okay going through old systems? Can we guarantee that every student always reached the potential the old ways and that everyone was okay? We can never, ever think like that. And that is a pitfall of thought. All were not okay. That is not true.
I'm raising my hand.
Well, Mike raised his, and then you're Mike.
All right, real quick, because I think you're misinterpreting, in all due respect, I think you're misinterpreting comments, okay? Because I think we all agree that we want the best possible program and we always want to move forward. I think the data actually suggests, and every kid, it's impossible to say that every kid was successful going through Fairlawn schools. the nature of the business is that that's not the case, no matter what district it is. The one thing I will say is that we do have empirical proof that Fairlawn has always, especially considering the type of town we are, the size of the district, that Fairlawn consistently, on just about every rating scale there is, proves that we are doing well. And the state thinks we're doing well. The only thing I want to say about, to add to what I said before, and I promised a parent that I would bring this up, but I think it isn't. It is definitely a thing, and I brought it up at the Buildings and Grounds meeting. When we're thinking about building on more so TJ than Memorial, there needs to be thought put into cafeteria and the lunches. I'm not comfortable with 4 lunches necessarily. I'm not comfortable with that span of time. And I think when you talk to parents about the lunches at PJ now, that they're overcrowded now. So I think it definitely has to be really thought about.
Mary. Oh, Mary, I'm sorry, I did forget about it. Out of sight, out of mind.
All right, that's okay. Out of sight, out of mind, no, I do also feel that you have misinterpreted a non-comment, certainly, that was made. Never would I say that every single child in Fairlawn was just fine with configurations of the past. And I think that would be a gross misinterpretation of what I meant. Equally, there are many of our young people, as Mike said, who have done very well, including people sitting right here in this room, who went to different configurations. So I thank you, Mike, for pointing out that I felt that was misinterpreting what I particularly have said.
Thank you, Mary. All right, at this point, and open it up to the public, I just ask if you, 3 minutes, come up to the podium, state your name for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Ken Bradsby. As long as we're playing the number of years in education. I spent 20 years teaching elementary and middle school age kids. I spent 20 years as an administrator, 16 of which were at North Point School here in Fairlawn. Currently, I train and mentor school principals towards their certificate, and I'm still working on it. I'd like to talk a little bit about pre-adolescent and adolescent children, because I think that's missing a little bit from tonight's discussion. They're characterized, as you know, by rapid changes in their lives. Physical, emotional, social, intellectual, and of course chemical. Those changes are going to happen whether they're changing buildings, changing location, getting on and off buses. And I think our obligation is to minimize all of these changes. Whatever external changes we can avoid them from having, we should try to do. I was a little surprised that there was a first recommendation for 2 separate schools, 2-year schools, which would cause children in this time period to have an extra transition to a new school administration, a new school guidance staff, a new cadre of staff. I didn't think it was a good idea. I know you could probably make it work, but at what cost to the kids? Adding another transition during a vulnerable time in their development. Accordingly, I strongly support the interim superintendent's recommendation to create 2 grades 5 through 8 middle schools. First of all, it's really supported in middle school literature if, in fact, what we're talking about is bona fide middle schools. There's been some discussion around this table tonight about whether we do have bona fide middle schools. Are there really houses? Are there really teams? Or has that somehow slipped away? This could provide an opportunity for us to revisit and renew what our middle schools are and how they operate. Now, I suspect if you do go to a 5 through 8 middle school, you'll have to reconsider everything that happens in middle school. Not only the placement of the kids, but the services and the program for those kids. There are many best practices in middle school education that we can learn from. But being Fairlawn is going to take only the best and try to do only the best. This will provide stability at a critical time for our kids. They'll have the same 504 team, the same child study team, the same guidance counselors, the same principal and vice principal for 4 important years during their development. I think that's critical, a critical advantage to the kids. I suspect, and I already know, there'll be community anxiety about the matching of these age groups, 10-year-olds with 13 and 14-year-olds. And I don't know what the program will be. I don't expect I'll know about it until it's implemented. But I'm confident that the administration and professional staff will create the developmentally appropriate school environment and curriculum. I'm also confident that enlightened school leadership and creative, energetic teaching will be prevalent in our newly constituted middle schools, grades 5 to 8. I think it's a good idea. And I'm glad that we're able to revisit the discussion. I regret that it was for financial reasons that the revisitation has happened, but I'm glad it's happened. Thank you for your time, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ken. Any other members of the public?
So, this statement is from my wife, Emily Cohen, who was on a trip as a scheduled in advance of tonight's meeting, so I'm speaking on her behalf. Hello, board members and neighbors. With this statement, I wanted to inform the board as well as the public that I delivered the petition to the Fairlawn Board of Education and School Administrator by email yesterday. The petition was against the 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration and in favor of the 5, 2, 8 configuration. It was signed by over 230 people with approximately 200 supporters from Fairlawn. The petition is available at fairlawn-middle-schools.org. I realize that the assistant superintendent recommended for 5 to 8 is based mostly on the revised estimate for the cost of classes. However, I want also to acknowledge that there are many, many people in Fairlawn who expressed concerns about the 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration on the petition and for other valid reasons, even before being informed about the extra tax burden of the classes. So looking back at the past to propel us into the future, I ask the board as they move forward with the referendum planning to liaison more deliberately and strategically with the community. As we can all see, many of us, especially with children in the school affected, are passionate about the issue. If done properly, discussion could be leveraged as a strength, making the process, outcome, and aftermath of the referendum even more successful. Yes, it is the board to decide what goes on the referendum, but it is the community that ultimately approves or rejects the plans. And the board is already consulting with Land Association, Ross Harburg and Associates, and 40 other 5 to 8 schools in New Jersey. Why not be more systematically consult with your own constituents here in Fairlawn at the point of process as well? At the very least, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're planning to do to solicit information from the Fairlawn public in your planning? Not just by electing the community on the decisions after they have been made, by consulting with the community around key decision points for configuring the elementary and middle school. Thank you for the consideration from Emily.
Hello. Christine Weinstein, Burbank Street. Hello. Any plan is going to be fine because my son is in special education, so I'm kind of screwed with middle school anyway. It's going to be a tough road, whether it's 5, 6, 7, 8. I prefer the 5, 6 and the 7, 8 version just because it's less age difference, but I can see both sides of the spectrum. I do have questions though regarding special ed classrooms. No matter what configuration, I know it's early, but I hope that these discussions are being had about how the special ed programs are going to move the 5th graders up. Because currently in the lower grades, the grades are combined. So you have K1, you have 2, 3, and then you have 4, 5 in most of the programs. How is that going to now work when we're going to move the 5th grades up into middle school? Are we going to split the middle school classrooms into 2 classrooms in the programs? Are we going to have 1 and just squish the 5th graders into there? I hope these are discussions. I know you don't have all the answers, but they are concerns of mine, big concerns, and how this is all going to kind of mesh together, specifically regarding special ed. And again, the social aspect and the maturity aspect is much greater when you're talking about, especially my son, on average, he's 10 years old, but his maturity level is lower than your average mainstream 10-year-old. So the gap then when you combine a 5th grader on the spectrum with an 8th grader, a mainstream, the gap is huge, and it's a big concern. I like the idea of surveying the parents. Thank you very much for, oh, I'm turning around and looking at the screen. You're not there.
He's there.
Hi. I do ask, though, that you have maybe 2 surveys for parents, because one for mainstream parents and programs, and one that pertains specifically to special ed programs, because they are 2 completely different worlds. Your survey questions for a mainstream group is not going to make any sense, or any concern is going to be totally different than for a special education parents. So I just ask that you please take that into consideration, as I know that you will.
I'm writing it down, so I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
you just said that sounds like a good idea.
Okay, good. And thank you so much for all of your work and bringing this to the table and allowing us parents to come up and voice their opinions and so on and so forth. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Barbara Montesina, 7-06 Mayfair Terrace. I've been a proud resident of Fairlawn for the past 34 years, almost 34 years. I want to thank the board and the administration for the excellent experiences my children have had going through the school system here. They're both graduates of Fairlawn High School. And they did go through the houses at the middle school. They were the first and third years to go through them. And they were very beneficial for children of that age. As a matter of background, in addition to being a resident, I'm a longtime educator as well, and one who taught in this district for 9 years. For the past 7 years, I've served as the assistant superintendent of the Tenafly schools, and prior to that was an elementary principal for 8 years. So I'm here tonight to urge the board to consider strongly the S8 resolution, which is the TJ and Memorial being reconstructed as a 5-to-8 school. I understand the issues of overcrowding in the schools and the need to configure the grades in the elementary and middle schools. However, I am opposed and was strongly upset to hear about the 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration that was previously discussed. Notwithstanding transportation expenses, the creation of a 2-year school, particularly during a child's most delicate years, during the adolescent and pre-adolescent years, is not a favorable solution. That model fragments a child's school experience during an especially challenging developmental time. The middle years are a time when children undergo huge changes, as many of us have talked about, and during the years where these changes need to, where children need support and services during these periods of rapid change. 2 years in a single school is not enough time for teachers, administrators, and other school staff to get to know a child or his or her needs. And however, 4 years does provide that opportunity. Now, for those of us who are accustomed to the K-5 model, it is a change. However, whenever your child goes to middle school, it is a change, whether it's 5th grade or 6th grade. I know that there's parents who are concerned about that, but I have trust that the schools will do all that they can to ensure that the transition is smooth and that the experience within the grade levels are both dedicated to the needs of those students and that students will have opportunities that keep them within the range of their developmental experience and enjoyment. In a well-run school, we can have the teams and houses that will be dedicated to these students. And if you think about it, a 5 to 8 is not all that different from a K to 5 school. One could easily argue that kindergarten and 5th graders are as different, if not more, than 5th and 8th graders. But regardless, it's the principal and the administration that can provide programming, instruction, and support to address the needs of various stage children at the middle schools, just like we do at their elementary schools. So I ask the board to reconsider and to consider the 5 to 8 model. Thank you.
I'm Andy Jackson, 36 Garfield Place, and I just have a very short statement. I want to commend the board, given a lot of past communication for not necessarily for this or that decision, but for the way to reach a decision. And to me, and Dr. Palestis, you especially, I don't know if you see me right there, for requesting additional research, for performing a survey, for comparing with other districts, and for listening to people like, sorry to catch your name, and Ken, right?
the lady and the gentleman that spoke before me, because all the research has shown that the multiple transitions are very, very bad for the children at this age. But thank you so much for reconsidering, and regardless of the decision that is going to be made, because I personally didn't love the 5 to 8 myself. I actually have a 5th grader, and the thought of her going to middle school is, I don't like it at all. But again, to me, the most important part of it, and I really commend you guys for doing that now, is that you're doing all the possible research from every possible angle, whether it's monetary, or performing the survey with other districts, or reaching out to parents, to educators, and comparing this solution to other solutions. And I also really want to urge you guys to put the stability of the children first before the monetary aspect, as much as I totally understand that has got to be a very big consideration. I think many of us, myself especially, would be happy to pay the taxes knowing that our children are getting the best that they can get, and not getting a half-ass solution, excuse my language, just because of money. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys reconsidering.
Hi, my name is Carla Morales from Brandon Terrace. I hope you guys make a decision tonight, because we need to move forward, and some of you are eager to do so. And thank you for that. There is certain intangibles that I think we should also take into account. That is, with the new model, we keep the local schools, and I think that's very valuable for us parents. Not only the buses are expensive, but imagine the time and the money parents are going to spend extra for those kids that cannot be bused, but need to get to the other side of town. So you mentioned it. It's not just the cost of buses, but it's also the cost in time. And for some parents, they have to hire people to actually bus their kids to different schools. I have two kids 2 years apart, which means my kids will probably not be in the same school at all times, which proposes a nightmare, especially for working parents. And also something that I don't think we have considered either is the amount of traffic that will put to the whole town that are trying to get to their workplaces. So not only you are driving one extra kid to another town, you're creating more mass movement on traffic. And I also, like, speaking from my kid, I have a very smart cookie, one of them, the other one was game. But I was also concerned that with the 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration, if there is a gifted student, they won't be able to move forward to other grades and get, for example, math if they are advanced in math, or if they're advanced in language, or any subject. If you have a 5, 6, 7, 8, those kids won't have what they actually need to continue their education and have better opportunities in other grades. And I think that's it. Thank you, and I hope you move forward with it.
Hello, I'm Esther Vera, senior class. I live by the water. I'm just giving you a little insight as a parent of a child at TJ. It's my 3rd son at that school, and I've seen it in the last 10 years increasing in student enrollment and decrease. My son's going to be entering 6th grade in September, and 10th grade coming to high school. I spent countless hours as a volunteer at TJ, so I'm here as an advocate for Catholic School. We're currently at 709 students at TJ. The capacity is 720. This September, we have 3 children with wheelchairs in our hallways. There is overcrowded hallways in between periods. It's a safety hazard that, as a parent, as a volunteer, it concerns me. And I would love for perhaps on back to school night or some other events if some of the board members would be willing to spend 20 minutes, half an hour, during lunch periods to see what it is for these children at lunchtime. Lunchtime is extremely overcrowded. We have had some disciplinary issues with our students, but successfully taken care of by our school principal. The noise level being so loud that they can't hear a bell in case of an emergency, or a lunch aide telling them to quiet down. you know, so lunch is an issue with the overcrowding. And then also on home days, where do you put these children? You're adding another grade to the school without considering adding perhaps a cafeteria or a different wing. What happens to these children when there is bad weather outside? They're going to be all stuck in the auditorium, which, by the way, our season auditorium are original to the building. And they are splintered, and we have had, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Our custodians buff them, but we do need upgrades to the school now. So I think this is a parent at TJ, and I do thank the board for your countless hours as volunteers. I know what that means. It's a thankless job. But drop-off is a nightmare. It has many safety issues. We're not allowed, as parents, to volunteer for safety patrol. I was told that we cannot stand outside, even with safety vests, and to help the administrators to direct traffic, because some of these parents do not listen to us. They will go right around us. You know, we had a parent who went over their child's foot a few years ago because they do not listen. So these are real concerns that are already happening at TJ. So I think for me, and is where the guarantees that the Board of Ed will take care of these issues in the future with the addition of another grade if our current overcrowding issues have not been properly addressed so far. Can you please include teachers and faculty staff in your surveys, because they're right there, they're on ground zero. They will be able to tell you from inside the school what is really happening at TJ, what's really happening at Memorial. You know, it's a little scary that we have 709 students for September and 3 children in wheelchairs. The back entrance to TJ right now has a ramp that parents will park right there, and we have to constantly call a police officer. We don't have an assigned police officer at TJ to assist us at the beginning of school. These are current issues that we deal with. You know, I know we have a resource officer. Yeah, and
You're going to help with the drop-off.
you know, I'm at that school as a volunteer parent every week, sometimes multiple times a week I will volunteer. But please,
Take it easy, Ann.
Sorry,
but if you could please.
Oh, you said great. Some consideration of the current issues that we have now at TJ, that would be wonderful. Because, you know, I do trust your decisions. You do have the best interests of the children in mind. But there are some real issues at TJ at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. David Trentner, 310 Allison Street. For one, I think that either configuration is going to work, and I think that, you know, the educators are going to do a great job in making sure that, you know, we maintain the best possible school district. But I do go back to the spring when you talked about, you know, the 5-6 and the 7-8 model, and I remember you talking, you know, glowingly about, you know, the opportunities and looking at Dr. Pless's report. You know, both Central Office and Board of Ed reached a conclusion that a 5-6 model and 7-8 model at TJ were preferred. So, you know, and due respect to everyone who spoke tonight, this is a financial decision. I mean, we can all just admit that this is a financial decision. This isn't something where you change your minds. Fundamentally, change your minds because of the busing. And I have some questions for Mr. Haber. I noticed in your report you talked about not being able to do a transportation efficiency study and therefore not knowing whether or not any of the current fleet could be used for some of this busing. Is that something a plan to do a transportation efficiency study? Because it seems to me hiring a consultant to bring that in, but then not having the complete information in order to make a conclusion, that $750,000 number seems to be reached with incomplete information. Am I incorrect about that?
Well, if we have been transportation efficiency study, we looked at the condition and the age of the buses. I think there are 11 buses that are approaching over age. Something like 11 buses that are at or over age. So they have to be replaced anyway. So we can do an efficiency study, but also, let me back up. Also, the way you route, you do very few routes for public school kids.
It's all special education.
Sure, no, it's all special education busing.
I don't profess to be an expert on busing. I'm just reading from the study where he made a point to say, because the transportation efficiency study has not been done, the estimate is based just on an assumption that none of the existing buses will be able to use for middle schools. We obviously don't know if that's the case or not without doing that study. I would assume that's why you included the report.
I made it as a point, but I think that in looking at the condition of the buses, at the age of the buses, that kind of a thing, I truly believe, just from my experience, it would make a difference.
Okay.
We need 10 buses.
Okay, because to me, and the other question I have, and I don't know, Mr. Green, maybe, is purchasing buses, could that be considered a capital expense, or is that something that would have to? What?
You cannot take it
No,
out
but
of
would that be?
capital reserve. No, not take it out of capital reserve.
What? So, okay, so that would basically be like a one-year hit on the budget for that year, which would be, assuming.
Well, you can lease purchase.
Okay. But I guess my question was, like, when you talk about the $750,000, if you're gonna buy buses, then obviously you'd have to have the transportation infrastructure. It seems to me that $750,000 per year would be the kind of last resort.
That's contract service.
That's what I'm saying, so purchasing buses where you buy 10 buses for, say, $750,000, and then I saw in your report, between $190,000 and $230,000 per year over those 15 years, over the 12 years, I think is what you have in there. It sounds to me would be palatable, assuming that you're going with the best possible choice. But again, maybe I'm misreading that, but again, that's my question, is that, this is a financial decision to go with 5 through 8. You guys, all of you, and Dr. Pelez has recommended 5, 6, and 7, 8. It seems to me that you want to do everything to make the 5, 6, 7, 8 work. And just from reading the report, it seems like there is a scenario that it's not horrible on the budget, or what we call disastrous on the budget. I just want to understand that better.
Well, first of all, it's not only a financial decision, it's a time decision. It's a labor decision. It's an availability bus decision. It's a driver decision. So it's not strictly for 1 year. Yeah, we go and spend $1 million on 10 buses. Okay, but then what do you do about the annual maintenance? What do you do about the ongoing costs?
Well, absolutely, the infrastructure would have to be created for sure. Yeah.
Which is a lot more costly than I think even is estimated in my report, because there are unknowns. I don't know what your insurance is going to be. I don't know what your labor cost is going to be. I don't know what your liability is going to be. I don't know if you pretend that someone mentioned traffic in town. It's time consideration with buses. I mean, what are you going to allow, 45 or 50 minutes?
We're just making assumptions. We haven't
They're not
studied
assumptions.
that.
They're assumptions based on reality.
Well, you just said they're assumptions.
I don't want to get into an argument.
No, I'm sorry. But I feel like that you're running into this decision. Mark talked about it, Jeff talked about it. We're rushing into this decision based on a timetable to get to the referendum, which, by the way, I support 100% that the referendum needs to pass, because there is, a dire need and a critical need. I just want to make sure that we're making this decision for the right reasons, and not just because our first choice was not financially feasible, or we just assumed it's not financially feasible. So go ahead.
That decision was not made just on that. When we first came out with that, and I'm just speaking for myself, when we came out with, I said, I stated, there's a lot of research that goes into it. This is not a snap finger decision. So this is not when they came up with it, oh, I'm done with that. All summer, I've been talking to districts and people that I have, principals, friends. For me, I'm speaking for me. I've been doing research constantly. So I'm just saying, this is not just a thing about that. I want to look at the whole picture. The bottom line is, Dave, what's best for these kids. And if that's not going to, if that 5, 6, 7, 8 is not really going to be the best, some people said it might work, some people said it won't. Dr. Ken said something tonight that I didn't even realize about transition. Okay, I mean, I got to be honest. Sometimes the transition, I'm like, all right, well, transition is light. But he brought up some really good points, and we have things that we're going to vote on later about what issues children are going through. And I see it as a coach. So, this for me was not that all of a sudden I changed my mind. I even stated I never gave up on the Edison thing, but there was a lot of we stated where we're moving people and everything else. Now everybody just said, oh, you're supposed to reopen it, and there was too much to go into it. So, and it's still going to be more to go into it. I've still got a lot of answers that I need from that.
I know, including cost analysis and all that.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that before it moves all that much forward, that all that information is in front of you and you're able to make the best decision for our kids based on having all the information.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave.
I just wanted to say one thing about the bus.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, whatever your name is.
Correct me if I'm wrong, just that, people here, we have 37 buses and everything else, but correct me if I'm wrong, every single one of those buses are currently being used to transfer special education children
in non-public.
In the morning, and non-public in the morning and in the afternoon.
Yes, or we have spares, because we have buses that don't have heat. We can only use them in the summer.
So,
But again, we're not a busing district. We
Right.
bus special education, and we bus on ground, and then we do all the field trips. We do all the sports, all the athletics, so our buses are used at 3 o'clock. Every bus is out, taking kids to their sporting matches, taking them to, that's what our buses are currently used for.
Any other members of the public? Yes.
Hi. My name is Erin Labrus. I live on 11th Street. I'm just confused a little. My child's still young. She's in first grade, so I have a few years before I get to this point. But I'm also an educator of 10 years in Queens, New York. So my question is, the referendum is to build up the schools as they are, like for the future, whether we do 5 through 8 or we split it? Or is the decision going to be 5 through 8 now, as is with the referendum, to expand the buildings?
Decision tonight, and we're going to decide on the configuration, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 5 through 8. But we're going to build, no matter which decision we make, we're going to build onto the 2 middle schools. There's just no way around it. So that, we're going to get into more of the details in the fall. But the plan is to build, without a doubt.
That's fine.
Where in Queens? We have an office there.
District 24, I had my parents service provider, so
I used to be in Corona.
not too far from
Whenever you hear Queens, I'm like, yeah, nobody.
Allison Line at 8-46 Cedar Street. I have a question with regards to Memorial, because Memorial is overcrowded also, and it's very old. And with the addition that you're suggesting to put on, do we legally have to update the whole school to be ADA? And how much is that going to affect the addition also?
There was a plan to put an elevator in.
Right, but I'm saying bathrooms.
You want the answer to that question? If you go over a certain percentage, you have to put 20%, depending on 20% of the cost has to go to upgrading for barrier-free to meet the ADA law.
Correct.
So that means you would have to, yes, you might have to upgrade some of the bathrooms.
The bathrooms.
But it doesn't mean you have to tear the whole bathroom apart.
No, you just have
And
to
you
make
have
it
to put
ADA
ramps have to be in
compliant.
for it and everything else, yes.
And how is, I mean, that's a big cost. Whereas would, if you kept it as a 5-6 in Memorial and 7-8 in TJ, would it be less of an addition? Because eventually I feel we're gonna slow down with the growth. There are a ton of houses for sale, and I feel by 2021, maybe 22, 23, it might go stagnant. Because we have a lot of senior citizens moving out now, a lot of young families moving in, and there might not be as many houses for sale. So what's gonna happen when it does go stagnant? You're gonna have empty classrooms.
I don't think you're gonna have as many in the classrooms as you might think.
No?
I mean, I was talking to Natalie about this a couple of, before she came away. And no matter what, school is going to find a way to use those classrooms. It might be empty for a period here and a period there.
Right.
But it's not like you're gonna have a ghost wing. Oh my God, you got 4 classrooms that can't be used.
Right.
So the plan that we like is let's do one building project and we're done for 20 years.
Gotcha.
And if there is a flattening or a leveling up or even a drop, I guarantee you, the real estate market goes up and down. And so it's just.
And my question is with the transportation cost, is that a one-time fee? Or is it $750,000 every year?
It's contracted $750,000 every year, and if you don't like the service of the contract and rebid, it could be considerably
Now,
higher.
does the $750 include purchasing those 10
No,
buses?
No, $750,000 is a contract.
Okay.
Contract with an independent contractor, you don't own the bus.
Scholastic or somebody like that.
Right. So what happened when TJ closed? Did we bus all TJ to Memorial? And so it was over 2 miles, and we have that many students that are over 2 miles? Because isn't busing over 2 miles?
Yes, 400, at this point, over 400 students would.
And more is it because, was it more because TJ is going over to Memorial, so it looks like that's why the cost is
I think it
so
was
high?
what, 300?
It was 300.
To Memorial.
310 to TJ and 101 to Memorial.
Okay.
So this would be
So
400
most
kids.
of them are coming from Memorial going to TJ?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of like the idea of the 5, 6, 7, 8, because I think it also intermingles the kids before high school. And
That was one of the pluses.
that's what I like, you know, because they all play sports together, they all know everybody, and it's making the school district one instead of segregated. The way, you know, some of the comments have said in the past, and that's what hurt me coming from the Westmoreland area. You know, I do like the 5, 6, 7, 8. I have my 3 generations of teachers in the family. I'm the only one that didn't become a teacher because I don't have the patience that you guys have. You know, my mother went in at 6 o'clock in the morning, came home at 5 o'clock at night, and I was a latchkey baby, and I walked. You know, and I grew up in North Haledon, and we had high school with 3 different towns coming in, and it was hard. You know, but I think, you know, we're so big in having the 2 schools separate grades, 5, 6, and 7, 8. I think it might help with everything. You know, that's my opinion.
Thank you very much.
Gene, can I add a little bit to supplement the question
Sure,
about
sure.
demographics? Gene?
Yes, I said, sure, go ahead.
One of the things that I mentioned during my presentation is the theme of due diligence. And so I mentioned quickly, but I think it's important for everybody to understand that we have one demographic study completed, and now we are going to engage, and we have a contract with a second demographer, so an independent person who will also take a look at the demographics in the community. And so, you know, the theme is, well, let's check our facts and then double check them, but having 2 people doing the demographics, to me, is a wise move, because then it would ensure community members that that component of the referendum is on target.
Thank you, Ron. The floor is yours.
Pam Howard on Radburn Road. I have a son in Radburn, and daughter at TJ, and I teach at TJ. And I started at TJ when we had the houses, and I was a 6th grade teacher. In the 7th and 8th grade, I actually had 2 houses, but the 6th graders, we had 4 houses. And it was a small pool of students, and it was a wonderful transition from the elementary school. And we were really sad to see it go, because we had a great feel for our students when we were in the house model. So that would be a wonderful thing if it were feasible to do it. Thank you so much for mentioning how crowded TJ is. Every time they're like, oh, just put another grade in TJ. I'm like, we can't fit who we have. The auditorium, we have to decide which grade doesn't get an assembly because all 3 grades can't fit. The lunchrooms are a disaster. But if we do the teams in the houses, I think we used to have a 6th grade grade. So the 6th graders were just in one little area, so it alleviated a lot of congestion in the class. But one question I had, when we started the whole, the 3 schools, it seemed, that fed into TJ were much, much bigger than the other 3 elementaries. And that's where the soft quarters idea came from, that we had room in other elementary schools to alleviate some of the crowding in the larger elementary schools. If the 5th grades are taken from all the elementary schools, I wonder about the equity in the class sizes. So are you still going to have 3 elementary schools with now, instead of an average class size of 25, 26, 27, they'll be more manageable at 20, 21, but then you have smaller elementary schools currently that might have 16, 18 classes, and now you're looking at 12 or 13 kids in a class. That, I'm not sure how that's equitable. How does that work?
Oh, Jim, you want to-
We are having another hard orders meeting
So the
to
orders
discuss,
might change.
to discuss
So we
this.
might do it different.
Uh,
Oh, okay.
It is a possibility, but we are certainly aware of the idea of equity between schools.
I mean, and you also have to remember that Memorial, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Lisa get you.
Oh, Lisa. That Memorial and the 3 elementary schools that feed Memorial are smaller than the 3 elementary schools that feed TJ, and TJ is much larger than Memorial too. So that's already kind of in the configuration.
Elise wanted to.
I just wanted to say, just because the fifth grade leaves the building doesn't mean that they're gonna add two, second grade teachers and make 10 kids in the class and have 4 second grades. You know what I mean? Like, that's not, the current idea is not, because this building is losing, 3 classes of fifth grade, that, it's only when you have more than, like, the board has a policy for 25 students, then you break a class.
So
you're
just
not
have
deliberately,
more
right,
art.
you're not just, right, they would have more room, because some schools have art on a cart, so now art can have its classroom back, or music can be in a separate class. So those things would be alleviated. Maybe there's a program that's gonna come into the school and need a classroom. And also, just to mention, the extra space, it's never really extra space, because we've rented space, and the district makes money by renting space to programs. We bring people in, students in, and so it's never really like extra space. There's always something
I would say, in terms of extra space, that would likely be a positive thing. I think our assistant superintendent, our new assistant superintendent, hello, I think it's your first meeting.
It was so nice for everybody to come out for my first meeting.
You ruined the surprise. I'd see nodding over this, so perhaps maybe there's agreement that open space is a really good thing, because then we can bring more of our special education youngsters back to district who normally would have to be serviced outside of district. And if, I can certainly feel for those parents who have to send their kids out of district, and so what a wonderful opportunity that could be for us to bring all the youngsters back into their hometown where they kind of belong.
Can I just get a sense of who else wants to speak? Anyone else?
I have a follow-up question.
Yes, we have to finish. Public.
Hi, my name is Robin Willens, 1011 Maxwell Place. So I have a question. My son is in second grade, and we're going into second grade, and it looks like he perhaps should be maybe one of the first classes that moves over. Currently, he's at Milnes, and Milnes School had 4 fifth grade classes last year. And moving that class to middle school, I guess, in theory, would free up about 4 rooms. And I guess my question is, while that sounds like a lot of space, ideally you can use it quickly, like you had mentioned, with music and art, where currently the music and the art programs are brought to the students within their classrooms. So my question is, has the idea of building on maybe long-term to any of the grammar schools been completely abandoned under this current idea? So that we're looking at long-term with projected, more and more kids entering the district. If we're just building on to the middle schools, long-term, how does that affect the grammar schools? And is it a possibility that the instruction be included in at some point?
Well, at this time, there's no plans to add to any of the elementary schools. We did look at that in the spring, and the issues are, there's a couple of issues. Well, when you can't build on a Radburn and under, you can't even get approval unless they get a year and a half. If you get approved to do it. And we looked at a bunch of different configurations, and it's on the website, you can look at it. But what we decided was the middle schools, adding the fifth grade, freed up 3-4 classrooms in each school. We felt that should be enough. Now, if the new demographic study comes in and says, hey, by the way, you're going to have 400 more kids, then we might have to look at it again. But based on the 2 demographic studies we've looked at, we're having the old one and then the fairly much newer, and then another one in October. That may change our thinking, but at this point, there's no thought of doing anything with the elementary schools. Okay.
I had a follow-up question, so I'm picking up again.
Yes, you
Sorry. In your recommendation for facility expansion piece,
Yes.
6 pages, page 2 of 6 under construction, expansion, and renovations, there is no mention of TJ in that, in those bullet points. Why?
Page 2 of 6?
Page 2 of 6, in the last, I think it's bullet points, and it says additional, we don't have it in front of me.
Both Thomas Jefferson Memorial could be expanded.
Right, but that's all it says, could be. There's no guarantee that there will be an expansion, that there will
The
be.
referendum will include, I can tell you, guarantee you, it will include TJ and Memorial.
Okay, I know will take care of our auditorium, right?
We may do that before the, I think Ron's working on it.
To be honest with you, we're working on air conditioning.
Oh, thank you, because our classroom do not have air
No, we're gonna air conditioning
In all three of them, the middle.
in the auditorium.
High
We're not
school.
talking about-
Yeah, the auditorium.
All right, that's good.
High school, yeah.
Sorry, I have one follow-up question.
Sure. Yes, you do.
I did.
I have to prepare.
Jump for Steve.
Sorry. So with the advancement up into 5-8 middle schools, currently right now at Memorial, there's certain specific programs for special ed. There's flex and just specific to Memorial, and then there's others that are specific to TJ. When we make this change, will that remain the same, do you think, or do you think you're going to mirror the programs in each school, so there'll be a flex program at Memorial, a flex program at TJ, and the same programs across the board, or how do you really foresee this staying the same, changing?
We're looking into all options, and I say that with all due respect to Mr. Haber. Rawson has been kind enough, and we're looking at the survey to actually put questions in there to other school districts who run these models. What type of special ed services do you offer? And please provide us with specific examples of what type of programs, as we're looking at our students preschool all the way up to 4th grade, where the programs may be. So consistency is definitely something we're looking at, as well as our current model now and what neighboring districts across the state are doing as well.
Thank you.
Well,
Just to answer your question, Mr. Haber's working on a utilization matrix, which we're gonna have out as soon as he's done. We'll look at the utilization of the entire district, all the classrooms, that's what we do. That's gonna help guide the administration, the board, the central office, everybody on how we get the most out of every classroom. Because one of the things I hate hearing, as Vera said, art on a cart, music on a cart, going to a classroom, noise the hell out of it. So I would like to see us, I would love to see us get every, no, that's what I'm saying, and the same thing people said. And I brought the same question up about what happens if it goes down. What, are we gonna have empty classrooms? And I was told we'll never have an empty classroom, we'll find a purpose for it, and I believe we will.
Sensory dreams and all schools.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, at this point, I think we have pretty much exhausted the conversation. I will say, from my own personal point of view, I agree with the recommendations of Dr. Palestis. I've heard everything everyone has to say. Everybody made some very valid points for and against. However, given all the information we have now, I think that the 5 to 8 is the way to go. I really like the 5, 6, 7, 8. I really did for any number of reasons. I also like reopening this school as an early education center. But after reviewing for the past 6 or 8 months, everything, I think at this point, we have to understand that, Dr. Palestis and I had this conversation, we need the rooms. We need the rooms. That is the ¡1 goal. His team has said the rooms are the thing. So I think we have to go ahead and vote on it, then move forward. That being said, I know everybody wants a break, and I know how this board works, so we're going to do it this way. We're going to just vote on S8, okay, right now. We'll go back into public meeting, we'll vote on S8, then we'll take our break, because our 5-minute breaks are never 5 minutes. And I don't want to have all these people sitting around waiting for us to come back, and I think that's why most people are here. So, we're back in the public session.
Before you do, I actually want to say something. Ma'am, I apologize.
Sure, go ahead.
I just would like to agree with what the gentleman over there said. I'm sorry, my name is Douglas Lee, I live in Manor Place. I don't have a prepared speech, I'm just a father with an 8-year-old daughter. And it sounds to me, as he had said, and as Jeff had said before, the 5 and 6, 7 and 8 was the original plan that most of you liked. And it does boil down to a financial situation based on busing and where it's going. It sounds, as he had said before, and I saw Mr. Trattner. Okay, here we go. That it sounds more monetary than a decision based on what's right for the kids. And I just think that voting on it, deciding on it tonight, before you get some more information on the monetary issues that lay at hand, I think is irresponsible. Because I think it sounded like all of you said, or I guess a majority of you, like that 5, 6, 7, 8 configuration. And voting on it tonight just because of the monetary issue, I think is wrong. That's what I want to say. I think you should have more information to it first.
Thank you. Okay. That being said, have a roll No, we're back to the public, in the public section.
Do we need a motion to go back into the session? Okay.
So, we're out of public into a work session, so now we're going back into the public. Yeah, need a roll, please.
Okay.
No, this is a roll call. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Here, there's $350,000.
Are we voting yes or no now?
No, this is here.
I'm here still, haven't left.
Here.
Mr.
You don't have any input from the town?
Mrs.
People and
Franco?
students, people.
Still there.
I don't think voting on it.
Mrs.
Thank you,
Ayala?
we've heard you, thank you very much.
A lot of people are mumbling that they agree.
Mrs. Wallace?
I'm here.
Ms. Quackenbush? Here. And Mr. Vanza?
Here.
Mrs. Piella?
You check
I have a question.
Yes.
Why do we have to vote on this tonight when the main thing is just to get the referendum going? This doesn't affect the building itself. I don't understand. I'm listening to the public, but like I stated earlier, I still want a lot of more information too. I'm not saying I'm in favor, I just want what's best for the kids, but we still need the space, that's the thing. But I don't see why we have to make a decision tonight, or it's gonna be 5 to 8. I'm without all the information.
We wait till September to do it?
I'm just asking a question.
Well, you do need to send an application into the state of New Jersey by September 15th, and our board meeting is September 18th.
Okay,
So
but-
what this voting on is the facilities configuration.
They have
So
to
whether
tell
it's
them that?
5, 6, and 7, 8 changes what that building might look like.
Why can't we have another meeting?
No, we're done with the public, I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
We had an hour and a half of public
So
discussion.
take an hour and 15. What do you mean you're done with the public? It's about
I've
the
done with the
public, what we're
public
doing.
comments. I had everybody's opportunity. I asked, would you like to speak?
Okay, but
And
you still
everyone
want to.
stopped. So that, I'm sorry.
People still want to.
I gave the opportunity 15 minutes ago, and now people want to speak.
Because you said you're gonna make a decision on voting, when most of us probably thought that you weren't gonna make a decision on
I don't
voting.
know why you think that.
That I think is what the problem is for most of us sitting here. Why are you done? The problem is that we don't wanna have the decision made yet without all the information, and it sounds like you're having all the information.
No,
You're trying to make a decision without it.
It just has to do
No,
with the
the
addition.
public discussion portion of the meeting is over. I'm sorry. An hour and a half. I asked if anybody else wanted to speak. I let you speak
I
after we
understand, I
closed it.
appreciate that.
Okay?
But that's the
But now
concern.
we're done. We'll be here till midnight. All right? And
So-
everybody
so a
has
couple hours isn't
spoken
worth it,
who
so-
I asked if they wanted to speak. I'm sorry that
The services
We
to
have-
staff and parents who are occurred after you made the decision?
regard, yes.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. What's the problem, what's the point of the input then? You take it and throw it
We're
away.
done. Okay.
I just want to know about the referendum and how it works. Like, when you do the referendum, do you have to put in the referendum already the 5-6 model versus the 5-3
In order to
model?
submit it to Trenton.
Okay,
we
that's
have to
all I
tell
want,
them.
that's all I wanted to know,
Okay.
understand the referendum. Okay.
But this is a work session, not an action session, right?
No, now it's an action session.
Oh, okay.
If we were in a work session, that's when I was asked for all the public comments. And then I said, does anybody else want to speak? Nobody said anything. We went back into the public session, now we're going to vote on it. Actually, when I think about it, somebody make the motion, and then we can discuss it again. We can do it that way. I'm a parliamentarian.
I make a motion that we.
This is on S8 only. The motion on S8. Mary made the motion. Does anybody want to second it?
I'll second
Thank
it.
you. Okay. Board members, comments.
I'd like to make a motion that.
You can't make a motion while there's a motion pending.
I believe still that we can reach our due date of September 15th by meeting once more, so it gives the administration time to answer our questions and alleviate the concerns of the public. I don't think that's unreasonable. We can hit our date. If the idea is about that date, we can still reach it. Listen, we haven't met like in a month and a half anyway. We can have a meeting. We can talk about it.
I'm not sure, I mean, the remaining people that are remaining, several people spoke for the 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, for me, I've always sort of been the proponent of the 5, 6, 7, 8. We we can move forward, anything that we decide we want to change, or if we even went back to the, 5, 6, and 7, 8 separate at some point, we would just have to petition and make, changes like with the state. I mean, I totally understand, if we meet again, even if we meet, in the first week of September or the second week of September before the cutoff date, they still have to put like, that's a tedious application that has to be filled out. So whatever decision that we would make on that day, we would miss the cutoff date, for sure, because there's going to be so much going on when school opens. I, for one, who was the person who asked the question specifically about the busing costs, which I think is a theme with me for busing costs, but specifically asked that question when we met prior, that started the whole sort of reopening the debate of how to, how to configure the middle schools. I think there were enough people here that seemed to think that it was a better idea. There might be a few people that are still like, 5, 6, and 7, 8 separate, but it seemed like there were a lot of people that got up and spoke for the transitions, for the having, the house system back. I think there were enough people that got up and spoke that were in favor of. I think there's always going to be a division of the public. For anything that we do, there's always some pros and some cons. And I mean, to me, the 5, 6, 7, 8 on the two sides of town has always been the better choice, just logistically and like I said before, cost-wise, rather than spend money on the 10 buses, rather than spend money on transportation. I'd rather see spending money on pupil services, because that's all about the kids. So that's where I'm coming from. I just wanted to iterate that.
Mike?
Yeah, I understand the deadline, and I understand what you guys are saying about the change, because it was a big change. I think we need to move forward with it. Logistically, I'm convinced that, and it's not, it is partly a financial decision, but I'm also convinced that logistically, it's a logistical reason why I'm going to vote for the motion. We kind of need to move forward with it. Educationally, I have my reasons why I think 5, 6, 7, 8 was better, and I have my reasons why now I like the 5 to 8. And Mr. Bratsky, thank you very much for your insight, because I really trust your insight. I wanted to say one more thing. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, I didn't write those.
Mark?
Yeah, I've listened to fellow board members, I've listened to the administration, and I'm satisfied basically with what Ernie said regarding the survey with the parents. It's not going to be about whether they want a 5 to 8 configuration. It's more than that. So the parents will be taken into consideration, but not as to whether it's going to be that kind of configuration. I'm not one to say that I've never made any mistakes and I've never changed my mind. But in this situation, listening to all that I've done, I've listened to, I've been persuaded to vote on it tonight.
Yes.
Just as far as the parent community is concerned, I think on a personal note, I mean, I look at Facebook not all the time as much as some other people do, but I think there's been a discussion out there for months about the configurations, whether it should be 5, 6, and 7, 8, or 5, 6, 5 through 8. And so what you just said, with the parents. I think the survey idea is for what's gonna go on in the middle schools. Would you rather the fifth graders be separate in a separate wing? Would you rather the fifth graders have gym with ninth grade? I mean, I think, should they have music together? I think that's what the survey is gonna be about, the meat and bones of what's going to happen in the buildings. Right, and I think the discussion, and I think we did even though I know people will disagree, I think that we did a fairly good job of including many different viewpoints in the 5, 6, 7, 8 discussion. And I think we've heard from, I've gotten several emails, many emails from people that came to meetings, from people that didn't come to meetings, people that I know, you know what I mean? So I think that not that you're mistaken, but I just think the way you said that made it look like we didn't include the community in these past discussions. But I think we've included the community a tremendous amount. I mean, you could always do more, but I don't think we shortchanged anyone, including ourselves.
Future surveys that are going on.
Right, but okay.
Ron? Okay, Ron and then Mary.
I just had a question, is that if we vote on this tonight and something did change, can it be changed?
Yes.
It can be changed.
Mary?
That's what I think, Ron, was an excellent point you just made. At any time, when we learn new things or when new information is provided, we can always make a change. But I'm already moving forward. I always kept an open mind on either one, and I feel that we have had excellent presentations. We've heard from the public, we have heard from our experts, including our superintendent, who is an expert, and I really feel that I'm going to have no problem moving forward with it.
Thank you, Mary.
I have one last thing. Quickly. I think if we postpone the vote to have another meeting at the beginning of September, that isn't fair to the administration of this district, because they have to get school open for the current kids going into school September 6th.
Now I'll open it up again. Oh, Cindy, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I just wanted to say, I do want to have the vote tonight, and I think that the rest of the stuff, just going back to what I said before, you can't do the curriculum before the plan. And I think it's important to move the plan, and the surveys that are going to go out is going to help formulate the curriculum that we're going to put in place so that these schools will open, hopefully everybody liking what they're going to see.
Thank you. Anybody else? I will now open it up to the public who wish to make a comment on S8. Come to the podium and state your name and 3 minutes.
So I want to apologize, my Stephen Bradford. I've been in a lot of meetings regarding the referendum and the expansion and stuff like that, and I think it's great. So my only question was, and I think you answered it, or we discussed it, was the timing, right? So I think the priority that we all agree on is the space is the issue, and then the configuration of space is secondary. So as long as the plan to expand can begin, and then you can modify an application or refile, that happens too without any sort of negative or adverse impact.
It creates a review period, and it would just delay the timing.
Okay.
You can change the plan,
That's
but
fine.
it
And I also
pushes
think
back your timeline.
Right, and so what was the time? So once you make the decision to expand, then you're still talking 3 or 2 years out before this is still going, so add another.
Between approval and construction and bidding, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to say that to keep in mind the public and the parents, but also the faculty, because a lot of times we're the last to know, but we're expected to make it happen. So, our opinion.
He said that.
Yeah,
Yes, he
Doc,
did.
yeah.
I know, but in this discussion, that just, Right.
Yeah, Lisa, can I add to that, Jane?
Certainly, Eric.
Well, so I did indicate that the survey, that survey would involve the faculty, and we already have scheduled a meeting with the executive board of the Teachers Association. I'll also be addressing this topic along with other topics when I have my convocation with all of the teachers on September 1.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say that this is more
Like we heard about people talking about how developmentally these kids need stable environment. So to me, it's not just the bus for the costly. To me, it's costly for the kids, costly for the parents, costly for the town, costly for transportation, not for the buses itself, but for us that are going to have to travel from one side to the other side of town. This is not about the cost of the buses. This is what's best for the kids that are transitioning from being tweens and teens and teenagers. Like, it's more than just 10 or 15 buses. It's way more than that. It's the development of the kids. It's all the cost of the parents and the emotional stability of the parents.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment related to that? Sorry. The one thing nobody said in this room, and I think it's related to other things, is that remember the effect on the kids that have to be bused. Even if we do this, these kids have to wake up an hour and a half earlier. They have to be on the bus. It takes a long time until the bus does the rounds. It's another hour. They have to wake up extremely early in the morning, and they come home much later. So they have less time to do homework. They have less time to relax. That time in itself, I think, is really critical in those years. Having my son just graduated TJ, that time is critical. So just one thing that was never mentioned.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the table, S8. Everybody's spoken, can I have a roll call?
Mr. Barbarullo.
Yes, Rhodey.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Abstain.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Spindell.
Yes.
Mrs. Franco.
Yes.
Mrs. Piella.
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace.
Yes.
Ms. Quackenbush.
Yes.
And Mr. Banta.
Yes. Okay, at this time, let's have a 5-minute recess. All right, we take 5 minutes, 45 minutes. A lot of night left.
Why don't you move?
Oh,
they all disappeared. They all disappeared. They all disappeared. Well, it was, okay. Yeah, I mean, not
Hi, Mary.
Hello, Mary. All right.
Barry, get your hand up.
All right, can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barbarullo. Mr. Klein.
I haven't left.
Mr. Rosenberg. Mr. Spindell. Mrs. Frank. Mrs. Piella.
Here.
Mrs. Wallace.
Here.
Ms. Quackenbush.
Here.
And Mr. Banta.
Here. Okay, we're gonna do it this way. Rather than me read every item, given the late hour, I'm
Yes.
just gonna do it.
Love it.
S1 through S7.
We're not gonna read the resolution, no?
We are. That one we're gonna do. S1, S7. Can I have a motion for S1, S7?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
All right, Mike, S1, would you read it, please?
Resolution regarding the retirement of Ben Flizinski, effective December 31st, 2017. Whereas Mr. Ben Flizinski, a member of the custodian staff since 1988, has requested retirement effective December 31st, 2017. And whereas Mr. Ben Flizinski has at all time exhibited a profound concern for health, safety, and welfare of students, staff, and public at large, therefore be it resolved that the Fairlawn Board of Education hereby publicly pays tribute to the employee and acknowledges his years of service to our district and wishes him many healthy and happy years in retirement, and be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Board of Education be directed to spread this resolution in full upon the minutes, and the Superintendent of Schools present a copy of this resolution to Mr. Ben Flizinski, the person being so honored.
Thank you, Mike. Let's do it this way. Anybody have any comments or questions on S1, the resolution for Mr.?
I have a comment.
Okay, Mayor.
Simply want to congratulate him and thank him for all his work. Once again, reiterate how important our custodians are to our home school. Wish him well.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay. Any other questions or comments on any of S1 through S7?
Of course.
Yeah.
these are the goals, right? That's what we're talking about, these goals?
The
Yes.
merit provision.
Okay. I do have some goals. First of all, the goals and for the superintendent.
The merit goals.
Yes. I have some questions. First, I really am very happy to see that we are making a strong move towards identifying more students with some issues and to put things in place that will substantially help them. However, I do have a couple of questions. To begin with, how did we arrive at the number 5%? And I want to know who the professionals in all this are going to be. Are they going to be like these people who are involved with all the mental health goals? Are they going to be psychologists? Are we hiring consultants? Are we training teachers? How does that all work? I just want to know how and who's going to be the decision makers in all this. Are they going to be mental health experts, or are they going to be school administrators? Not that I'm saying that school administrators don't know anything about mental health, but obviously that is a field that is very specific. So I wanted to be sure that the decision makers with this are going to be, in fact, mental health experts. And I want to know how referrals due to anxiety to reduce the number by only 5%. I want to know how that number was arrived at.
Well, let me start to address it, and keep in mind that there are two components that we'll be visiting later in the evening. One is a component in which we will be focusing in on elementary students, and the second one is one that's going to be focused in on the middle school. So in terms of the numbers, we kept careful data during the last school year of the number of students sent for mental health issues, for referrals and evaluations. And so that would be our baseline, and our goal would then be to reduce that number by 5%. And I wanted to introduce Nick earlier. I know that he already participated in the meeting. But we have two focuses here, and I want to compliment my administrative team for the amount of work that they did during the summer, not just on referendum-related issues, but also on this particular issue in regards to mental health. So a portion of it, you'll see later in the agenda, was very creatively put together by Natalie in regards to mental health issues on the elementary level. This particular goal deals with the middle school, and Nick brought to us a concept that's very, very exciting, in which we would be working with mental health professionals, master's degrees in social work, who would take direction and would work hand in hand with our staff. So referrals would be based on parental consult as well. We would be working with administration and teachers, serving as a bridge. I think a real significant component of this is if we look at our current staffing, we have very fine professionals in the field of guidance counseling and child study team. This would bring into the district experts who would then supplement the work that we're doing now. Nick, do you want to add a little bit to Central Schools?
Sure.
Since that's primarily the middle school.
Absolutely. Yes, no problem. So mental health is obviously a concern. I know I've been here for transitioning for 3 months, and then actually been working here full time for the last 2 months now, and hearing a lot of the concerns of the people in Fair Lawn. Mental health is a concern, not just in Fair Lawn, but everywhere, systemically. We're hearing it on the news, we're seeing it. So in hearing the concerns and thinking about what can we do to address mental health here, we were able to look at our options here. Having experience in doing this for the last 7 years, putting mental health providers into a school to address those needs, to answer your question, they would be mental health professionals. Not myself, not a guidance counselor. Could be licensed clinical social workers or somebody along those lines, but definitely mental health professionals. We would identify students through a referral process that could come through administration. Myself will still work out all those details, but it will be a referral process with parent consent as well. We will not just start seeing students without parent permission to see those students, and it would be individual, group, family counseling, things along those lines where we'll still be able to meet our students' needs in our buildings and in our schools without having to worry about them being sent out or possibly being hospitalized or seeking other treatment. We'll still be able to educate them while addressing the mental health right here in our Fair Lawn schools.
Can I just, thank you, I just want to follow that up. I guess it's for both the superintendent and assistant superintendent. One, there's still the issue of the training of the people who are on the front lines, quote unquote, to be able to more accurately identify mental health issues, because we still hear too much of boys will be boys, this is what's supposed to happen, they're in middle school, they're supposed to act that way. But how do we, what's going on to train teachers and other professionals to be able to more accurately recognize issues, ones that normally wouldn't? And so my question is also for Dr. Plestis. I'd hate for you not to be able to reach that goal, because it seems with this, if we're training more people, it seems like a good number would be if it actually kind of increased by 5%, if there were more referrals, because that means we're identifying more students and we're getting more students help, rather than seeking to reduce referrals. No?
I think outside referrals, like.
Yeah, the intent there was outside. So we have data on how many students during the 2016-2017 school year were referred to outside agencies. And some of those outside agencies included hospitals, as well as other mental health professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists.
Understood.
We believe by working with parents and mental health professionals, we can reduce the number of students sent to outside agencies, service them as well. The concept that we have in mind also contains a significant professional development program. I know Nick has already started to lay the foundation for that. And Jeff, that was a good question, so that our teachers and our administrators and guidance counselors, child studies team members have a sense of, should I or when do I refer this child to our own in-house folks? But the mode that we were in last year was that any significant issues went outside.
Right.
That included hospitalization, partial hospitalization, psychiatrists, psychologists.
I just want you to know that I support this 100%, but I thought maybe you'd want to reword it so that it works more to what exactly you're trying to do, because the wording doesn't match what the initiative and how the whole thing works. So again, 100% supporting that, but I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, you get what you're entitled to.
Well, I appreciate that. Nick, can you elaborate a little bit about the PD piece?
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to jump in, Natalie, real quick before I elaborate on the PD piece?
I'm just wondering if maybe like what we would want to add is would reduce the number of referrals to outside agencies due to, just as a clarification.
Modify it tonight, and then the clarity when it goes over to the county.
Okay.
That's a good, and Jeff, it's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, so professional development would be part of it. They would work hand in hand with the staff, not just the staff, but with the families. Sometimes they'll do PD during the day on issues that could relate to technology. I've seen them do presentations on Facebook and how powerful that could be in dealing with mental health issues, but also do the same presentation at night to parents. With that being said, there's weekly and daily communication with teachers, so we could see, after training those teachers on signs and symptoms that we could possibly be looking for, that feedback constantly between the teachers and the clinicians. Little things such as grades dipping, maybe showing up to school late. Those little triggers that we may take for granted every day can be a sign of something bigger. So yeah, they'll work with our staff, they'll work with our teachers, our families, and everybody in the community to address that whole mental health piece. It's not just them coming in doing counseling and going home. There's so much more to the program.
Understood. So again, I want to thank you for putting this in, and I know that Dr. Plessis, I emailed you on this when that $604,000 came up, so I appreciate that I see this. And So rock and roll, and when we talk about being progressive, this is a good progressive thing that we're doing.
It's a big move for us because, we've moved now, we're assuming that hopefully this will be approved later in the evening, but we've moved from a traditional use of administrators and guidance counselors to support kids to bringing in real mental health professionals. And that is something that I think Fairlawn will be proud of next year as we begin this school year and into the future, because this is the ultimate way to protect kids. We need students in our buildings who are confident about themselves, who have good self-esteem, who know that it's okay to turn to another adult for help. So to me, this is significant.
Oh, yeah, your battery's dying.
Yes, we're
fix that.
Ernie,
We're getting
Rick is
another-
gonna swap iPads, so at some point, we're gonna hang up and then call you back.
Okay, then we
Plug
can,
it in.
do you need a battery?
Okay.
The
We
the
couldn't
power
be-
is
we
what
can't-
goes to the smart board.
right, so we don't have enough.
Yeah.
We're getting another one, yeah. We use that
Want to
connection for something
switch me to
else.
audio? Can we do that?
No, we're gonna switch the iPad in there, right?
Rick's going to
Okay,
get another
in the meantime,
iPad.
Mark has a question. Comment.
It's not a question, it's a comment, and I'm looking at this in a different perspective, and I had trouble sleeping last evening and thinking whether or not I was going to approach this topic, but in my heart, I really feel that I need to, and it's difficult because I have great respect for Nick and for Dr. Lestis, and it has to do with merit pay. When the superintendent's salary was at $165,000, I understood why Governor Christie provided an opportunity to get merit pay. It was an underhanded way to supplement the salaries that had been cut significantly and to try to stop the exodus of the superintendents from running to other communities. But now with the maximum of $196,000, I truthfully don't think that there's reason to continue with merit pay any longer. And I know that anytime merit pay is considered, it has to be approved by the county superintendent. So they're giving their stamp of approval on this. And I'm speaking on this topic, and I hope that both of you do not look at me differently when I get done saying what I have to say. I certainly know that Dr. Pleth is, right now it's like 4:30 in the morning where he is. He works 24/7. We really never, or at least I never really thought that any interim superintendent would put in the amount of work that he does. And I know that Nick also extremely hard worker. So I have nothing against what they do, but I do have a problem with the merit pay because in my opinion, and this is my opinion, the merit pay, the goals that they set, are the goals that normally would be reached by any district member working in the capacity of the job that they're doing. If they were not doing these particular goals, then perhaps we would want to revisit their contract and reconsider employment for them. But to write these goals is fine and dandy, but there shouldn't be any kind of merit pay along with it. And I always felt that way, even with teachers doing their jobs, because there was discussion about having merit pay in New Jersey for teachers. Again, it's the job that you would normally be doing in order to continue with your employment.
Point of order, James.
Yes, Mary?
Point of order on the question. I believe that the merit pay was negotiated in the contracts of the two, the superintendent and assistant superintendent. So while I respect what Mark is saying, is this an out of order discussion only because it's already in their contract? Did we not, was that not part of the negotiated contract?
Yeah, Mary, we agreed that there'd be merit goals. We did agree to that, but I don't think Mark is saying. Yeah, I just think Mark doesn't agree with that particular aspect.
Exactly what your objection is, and I'm not commenting at all on your objection. I'm only commenting on whether or not this is an appropriate conversation, given the fact that we did approve merit goals.
The only problem with that possibly was it was not a 9-0 vote. And I'm not sure. So I'd like to continue, Mr. Green.
I'm not going to comment. It's up to
All
the
right, I
president.
just don't know.
Okay.
No,
The president
Let
makes
Mark,
the
go
declaration.
ahead.
Okay. So,
Don't speak to Mike.
so I understand what you're saying, Mary. With the assistant superintendent having merit goals, he's only been here for 2 months, has not really even proven himself in the position that he has worked, and yet he's being offered merit pay for that. And the last thing I want to say is, I'm wondering why one assistant superintendent is being offered merit pay or merit goals, but the other assistant superintendent who's been here longer has no goals and no merit pay offered to her.
That we can't discuss.
Okay, that's just, it's not for discussion,
Okay.
it's just verbiage that I'm saying. With that, I leave you to your thoughts, and I'm basically finished.
Just let me respond a little bit about the process in a very general sense. So the next step in the process is the board should approve the motions that are on the table. Then they are sent over to the Bergen County Superintendent of Schools for her approval or modification. And then at the end of the school year, the superintendent, assistant superintendent revisit, do an analysis, and then the board has at the end of the year, whether it's June or during the summer, an opportunity to sit and decide whether they agree whether those goals were approved or not. And so I'm just keeping it general in terms of the process piece.
Yeah, I actually would like to say that although I would vote for this to go through because it is something that we had discussed, I actually agree with Mark. You have a job, you do your job, if this is part of your job, then you decide that you want to pursue this, and at the end you are successful or not successful, and you say, wow, that was great, or we need to revise it. But I think that discussion needs to be had, like maybe at the school board's level, because that group can go in and say, these are ridiculous, and maybe the rates of pay need to change, and there's like so many other dominoes that would have to fall. But this is the world, unfortunately, in which we live, and this is how it's done. So I don't object to seeing this or voting for this, but I also think that it was better before they instituted the merit goal idea, because all of a sudden something that was part of your job became something that you could achieve for more, and it does reflect back on the governorship changing and all of that. So I don't think we can change it, but I think it would be something to discuss at that level, at the school board level.
Anybody else on S1 through S7? Members of the public, any questions or comments on S1 through S7? Yes.
My name is Vladimir Itkin, Greenwood Drive. I'm not going to comment on this, just about the goals, one of the goals. First of all, I want to commend the board for including the elementary school math education. As some of you know, this is my passion. A couple questions. Many of these goals involve creating a committee and creating a written plan. Just a question, will these written plans be available to the public once created? And another question, I just suppose the committees will be for staff of the school. they will not be open to volunteers, right?
Well, I'll let Paul weigh in about what part is available to the public. I'm not quite sure. The committees, the strategic plan, I think that's what you were referring to. We've already been in contact with School Boards Association, and participation of the public is vital. So that includes the public as a whole, as well as teaching staff members. And that's going to be an important initiative for the district, because if we're able to put together a 5-year strategic plan, what that does is it gives us direction for the next 5 years. I'm scheduled to meet with Matt Lee the first, I think the second week of September. We'll do that at central office to kick off strategic planning. I think that was your question. And
Actually,
all the availability,
it will be, yes, it will be available to the public.
It'll be published on the town.
Okay.
I'm more personally interested in the elementary school math education committee and that document so far. But that will also be open to the public, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Vladimir. All right, anybody else? Yes.
I'm just wondering what the everyday math end of the year assessment entails. Is it similar to the park? Is it not similar to the park? Is it more aligned to the book or the curriculum that they're? I mean, obviously you guys probably teach the park, but is it more aligned to the book that the students are using? What does the everyday math assessment entail?
So,
Your name? Oh, Kyle Mendelson. I'm sorry.
Oh yes.
do you want me to answer that, Ernie?
Yes, go ahead.
So the Everyday Math is the program that we use K through 5 in district. So the end of year assessment is based on the curriculum, and it is based on the information that the students have learned throughout the school year.
Is that a computer-generated test? Is it paper-based?
Some of them we have turned into computer-based tests so that the students take them online. I know we definitely do the mid-year online, and I think we're looking into doing the end of year that way as well. We get much quicker results. The ConnectEd is actually an online platform that we can use to keep track of students' progress on all of the math standards that they need to learn. So for every assessment that comes along with the Everyday Math series, we connect it to the standards in the state of New Jersey, the student learning standards in math, and so we can take a look and say, okay, so this child is struggling with this particular math standard, this student is struggling with a different math standard, and so then we can make sure we address those needs of the students. So that's what we're aiming to look at. We're aiming to identify, are there certain areas in certain grade levels in which students are not performing as well, whether that's so that's what we're looking to do with that. So it is assessing what we teach the students in the class every day.
Now, ConnectEd, is that like an intuitive-based program?
ConnectEd is actually something that the teachers use on their end, and the students, can work on specific problems. And we go over that with children, with parents and things. So our math supervisor and our elementary math specialists work with the teachers, the students, the parents on how to use the different components of the Everyday Math program.
Great.
Okay?
Thanks. Anyone else?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm seeing the goal for like increasing achievement in mathematics, but the goal completion is just based on supervising and supervising. Nothing actually look at the goal. Like it doesn't get the merit pay if you actually increase the achievements. So it's just like even if nobody increased the achievements, it still gets the merit pay. Like I think it should be tied to results and success.
It is tied to the results. So we're looking. So if you read the goal,
okay.
It says that the students in grades 5, K through 5 will increase their performance on each of the standards. So what we do is we take a look at the math standards throughout the year. And so at mid-year, when we look at those standards, we identify where do we still need to help students perform better. And so we work with our teachers and we discuss the specific standards that we need to improve. We do PD with the teachers to help improve the students' performance in those standards. So we are looking for students to perform better from mid-year to end of year.
Okay, so it's required that it's going to be,
Yes.
like, it doesn't increase.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
Anne Marie Covell, I just wanted to say I'm very glad that you're looking at the mental health piece. I met with Nick this summer, and I really hope you can do what it needs to do. I just have a question, like, right now I feel like there's not really room for someone who's smart and just has anxiety issues. I think there's more kids like my daughter.
So, just to address it, thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting with you and your family. You know, we hear mental health, and unfortunately, sometimes we just, it gets stereotypical that maybe a student is struggling academically. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's the students that are academically driven, and the stress of the academic-driven society that we live in nowadays may push students to that mental health piece. So unfortunately, you know, we just tend to, as a society, and I want to speak for everybody, but we may think of as a student maybe with behavior issues or who is academically struggling, when that's not always the case. It runs across the gamut. When I first started doing this, and I say doing this probably 7, 8 years ago, dealing with the mental health piece, we did almost look at just a small cohort of students that were behavioral issues, and I learned from those mistakes that it wasn't. It's across the spectrum of all students in education. So this is not just a special education initiative. This is a fair loan initiative for all students.
Can I follow up on that? Sure. Is that going to include, because you mentioned a student, a specific type of student, like students that are being too driven, are we also going to look at the piece of what the school is doing itself in terms of the school maybe being an unknowing proponent of that drive for students that's causing the anxiety, especially at younger ages where too much is expected them at too early of an age, things like that. So maybe we need to look at some of what we're doing, maybe planting those seeds. The force that to take this many AP classes, or you're in 5th grade and you better get into that 6th grade class, advanced class at 10 years old, or So I think that, again, I brought this up in another meeting. We need to look at what we're doing that is driving mental health issues, because we may be. I'm not saying we are. Right. It's possible we're part of the problem.
I agree, and I think that I don't agree that we're part of the problem. I'm just saying I agree with what you're saying. I think that the teacher feedback form I've seen to be very successful because it gives us indications where we can say, okay, wait, maybe this is happening. Now, how do we get to the root of the problem of why it's happening? So, I think sometimes we do need to self-reflect and see what we're doing.
Ernie, are you back?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Hello again, everyone.
Hello.
I too, I'm really happy to see this put into play, because I think it's a really important key that's been missing. I hope that I see that's going to be focusing more on the middle school and upper grades only. Will this also kind of trickle down to the lower grades? And also, I'd like to kind of plant a seed is maybe, as you're getting through this and working through this, maybe you could implement the PTAs in the town to kind of help spread the message and kind of get more parents to the message of these programs and what's available, especially Place, to kind of help get the word out so that more parents are aware of what's available to them so that they can all benefit from it, not just special ed.
So I don't want to steal Natalie's thunder, but we're working on this collaboratively where I'm kind of looking at the middle school approach and she's looking at the elementary approach, so I'm just going to throw her under the bus.
Do you want me to?
Natalie, I think, why don't you jump in, because Natalie was able to do some creative work over the summer with federal grants.
Right, so we recognize that this mental health issue is not just at the upper grades. We are seeing students struggling even in our elementary schools. And so we feel that it's really important to address those needs as well. So we are looking to contract with Care Plus, very local. They offer fabulous supports and services. They will be going into each one of our elementary schools. And they will be offering, again, similar types of services as Nick was speaking about at the middle school. We will be looking for referrals, and we have to continue to create that referral process, but it's going to be multi-pronged. It can come from many directions because sometimes parents see things that teachers don't see or vice versa. And the needs could be extremely varied. And so it can be an anger management problem. It could be a withdrawal issue. It could be bullying, so many issues across the spectrum. And so we sort of look at that in the elementary school is that they are young. We need to address these issues and provide students with coping skills. We need to equip them with the strategies on how to deal with issues as they get bigger and bigger, the issues, and also as the students get older and they're bombarded with more and more. So we're looking, again, we will have LCSWs and LSWs and mental health clinicians in our buildings that will work individually. They'll hold groups. They can help us in times of crises. And the other nice piece is we are going to have an LCSW on staff that will be able to do psychiatric clearances for our families and students. So in the past, when there have been issues that have arisen where a child might have to go out and get a clearance, they typically go to an emergency room. They have to wait in an environment that could be a difficult environment to be in. We are now going to be able to offer that right here in district so that our families can just come to one of our buildings and we can address the child immediately in a very safe, secure, and more familiar environment. So we're really happy about that as well. There is also a professional development piece where they are going to be offering professional development to all of our staff members, at least 20, throughout the 6 schools. We can offer those in a variety of ways on a variety of topics. So there are probably going to be some that are similar across the schools, but there might be something special going on in one place that maybe we want to address more specifically. Again, there will be parent education pieces. If there are school avoidance issues, we will have people that can go out and try and get that child to come to school. So we just see this as being just a phenomenal way for us to support our students and our families. And I think that's the other piece that's so important with both of our programs. It's not just students, it's staff, it's families. So it's very comprehensive, and it's about education, and it's about supporting our students so that they can be successful in our buildings. We all know that if you don't have those basic needs met, the safety, the security needs, academics is not on their minds. It's just not. So we are looking to take care of that whole child, and we're very excited about it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's what's been missing. It's a big piece that's been missing. And I'm so excited, so happy, so thrilled to hear this.
Good.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ryan,
She actually has.
okay,
She has.
thank you. All right.
We're back.
Call on S1, S7.
Mr. Barbarella?
Here, yes. I don't know if I'm saying here, yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Spindell?
Yes, except no on S2, S3.
Okay. Mrs. Franco? Yes. Mrs. Fiala?
Yes, abstaining on S2, S3.
Mrs. Wallace?
Yes.
Ms. Quackenbush?
Yes.
And Mr. Vanta?
Yes. Okay, can I have a motion for P1 to P27?
You didn't do E,
Oh,
E1 through E10?
E1 through E10, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Board members, questions, comments on E1 through E10?
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question. In the English curriculums that are, and please feel free to get back to me, that we're approving, do you know if they're reading The Alchemist?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Besides
I will
I know they do it
definitely-
enriched in 7th grade,
I will get back to you.
please, because I have to go to the one.
Please.
I just wanted to say that I love the up to II, different trips that the students are taking, and that everything's coming in way ahead of time. There's stuff in there for June, which I thought was, if you know that they're going, it's easier for everyone to be able to
I
plan.
have to
So,
agree with my coworkers, that's been a pet peeve for the two of us, so.
Yes.
I was very shocked to see, going all the way to August. I was like,
Any board members? Members of the audience? P1 through P27, questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Wait, E1.
I'm sorry, E1, right? E1, sorry.
Mr. Barbarulo.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Stendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Frankel.
Yes.
Mrs. Piella.
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace.
Yes.
Ms. Quackenbush.
Yes.
Mr. Banta.
Yes. Okay, now,
Now,
P1, P27. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Board members, questions, comments on the items?
Give us a second. I don't have any notes.
When we are now using, sometimes we're using names in the, thing, and sometimes we're using employee numbers, is there a reason why there's, sometimes we see the names and sometimes we do not?
well, based on legal guidance, we were
Yes.
told that there are certain motions that should not have the name in, only the
Very
employee
good, okay,
number.
thanks for the clarification.
Ron?
P21. Lead bus driver. What's the difference between them and like the regular bus driver? Just taller. No, Tommy's not taller, trust me. No.
They schedule all the field trips and sports.
Oh, okay.
So it's split, it's a stipend that's in their union contract, and they split between the two guys.
Yeah, well, I know Tony and
Yeah.
Jerry do most of it, so that's why, okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Any other board members?
Yeah.
Jeff?
P2A, 1. Is that the person we were discussing last time
Yes,
with that? Yes.
yes.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, it's all gone through everything.
Awesome.
Board members, anybody else? Members of the audience? P1 through P27, questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Barbarulo,
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Stendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Franco.
Yes.
Mrs. Piella.
Yes, with P9, that's the,
Mrs. Wallace.
Yes.
Ms. Quackenbush.
yes.
Mr. Banta.
Yes. Okay, items SE1 through SE7. Have a motion?
So moved.
All right, board members, questions, comments? All right, members of the audience, SE1 through SE7, any questions or comments? Seeing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Okay, Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Spindell.
Yes.
Mr. Barbarulo.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mrs. Franco.
Yes.
Mrs. Piella.
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace.
Yes.
Ms. Quackenbush.
Yes.
Mr. Banta.
Yes. Okay, F1 through F13, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Members of the board, questions or comments? Ron?
Okay, two things. Again, as usual, PTO comes through in Westmoreland for a laminator. One heck of a laminator. This is on everybody, but that's good. But I had one question. I don't know if I read it here or one of your notes, Brooke. We are looking into, or maybe it wasn't here, a new scheduling type thing for the usage of our facilities. Are we looking into it? Have we done it?
We looked into it, we got school facilities.
That's at school.
So it'll be an automated paperless system that allows for a faster,
Yeah, so we didn't start it yet.
everybody's in the training, so we've got it rolled out to all 10 locations. And then we're gonna start to pull back the paper.
So somebody who wants to use the school would still have to call your office.
They would put the request in,
Yes.
and the principal would either approve it or not approve it, and then it comes to our level.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's better because that way, instead of them requesting a room that's already taken, they can already see it's unavailable.
That's what I do with you.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
good.
Any other board members? Elise?
I just have a question about F11B.
D or B?
B as
B as a
in
boy?
non-public first student in Englewood. We're paying that? Yes.
So they changed, the state changed the aid in lieu, went from $884 per pupil to $1,000 per pupil. And this was one of the non-public transportation bids, so we are responsible to transport all of the non-public students that live in Fairlawn. And if we can't get them a bus, we have to pay them, what's called aid in lieu. This was one of the routes that was not picked up because it was over the $884 per pupil when they put it together. We had requests to go back out for bid, we went out for bid, and the first student won that bid. And it's under the $1,000 per pupil, which was that new state that they just changed it for 17, 18.
Okay.
Jeffrey, did I see you there? Oh. Any other members of the public?
Members of the audience?
What?
No,
I'm saying members of the audience.
I'm sorry, you said that.
You said the public first.
That's why I.
I said both, but
You're a little
okay.
close.
David.
I have a question on F11E and F. For Mr. Haber, is he doing more than just the transportation study? Is there something about facilities?
He's doing a facilities utilization study within the matrix that Ron was talking about.
Okay, yeah, I know you referred to that. And what is a scheduling school organization that Mr. Merriam does?
So Mr. Marenbloom is a nationwide recognized scheduling consultant. So when we're talking about programs and what could our programs look like, this guy is the person to consult with and talk to.
So that's for the new,
Yeah.
the new configuration, that's part of the referendum.
Yeah.
Is this money that will be part of the referendum, or this will be in the budget?
If we can get reimbursed for everything from the referendum, it'll go back to the referendum. If the referendum doesn't pass.
No, I understand. Is that an annual fee or is that a full?
This is gonna span over the next 4 years,
Okay.
3 years.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So Ross was the consultant that talked about the buses for the schools.
Uh-huh.
And so until today, he worked for free, or like how did that work?
No, we put a purchase order in.
So this is a new one, additional one?
No, this is that contract, but
So
we
you-
don't have a meeting in the summertime until August.
So you get a purchase order and now you're approving it? If you worked,
Uh-huh.
He was on spec, technically we could say no.
He's under $40,000, which means that we're allowed to do that without a board motion. During the summertime, when we don't have board meetings, and we have to keep things moving, we put a purchase order, and this was an amount of a not to exceed amount.
I had a question on that. This guy, Marion Bloom, he's like the only guy that does the scheduling and all this stuff, but I know that other districts have used him for the rotating drop block and all this other stuff. He's like the only guy that does this?
Yeah, he's pretty much,
He's got the corner of the market.
very much.
All right.
I mean, again, this is a not to exceed amount.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying, I just see this guy, everything became all over the place. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, like there's not something else. Because maybe we should start a business like that or something.
I asked the same question. You did have research on him? Yeah, he's pretty much the guy. He's smart. Get into something that you can corner the market on. He did.
All right, any other members of the audience? Yes.
This, I guess F11B, where we keep in a school, there's 33 students that go to one school. Why do we pay, like, we pay for that in school too?
No.
We just pay for the transportation.
It's a law.
Take-
Okay.
There we have it. Anyone else? Public? Before again? Roll call, please.
Okay. Ms. Quackenbush.
Yes.
Mrs. Wallace.
Yes.
Mrs. Franco.
Yes.
Mrs. Spindell.
Yes.
Mrs. Piella.
Yes.
Mr. Barbarulo.
Yes.
Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes, but no on F11E.
And Mr. Banta.
Yes. All right.
now we open the floor to the public to comments or questions about any topic.
Old or new?
No, public. Oh. Whatever, old, new, or newer.
You stole your podium.
Y'all gonna bring the podium back?
Mike, did you say E as in Edward? Okay. David.
So, I guess my question is based on, I mean, what is the status of alleviating overcrowding for this year for Mills and Radburn? Do you know whether or not there's been voluntary kids that have moved, or do you have any update on the number of kids enrolled and where that all is, and what the plan is
What's the latest?
fall?
Latest and greatest.
We have the Soft Borders program has been implemented. Right now at Radburn and Milnes, it looks like our overcrowding is on the 3rd grade. However, no more than 25 students. Now, I don't have any notes in front of me or a spreadsheet. Warren Point seems to be experiencing the most growth. We added a kindergarten section there. So in terms of the use of the soft borders, and please keep in mind that we're talking August 21st, that seems to have alleviated a lot of the issues. All of those students who were grandfathered were grandfathered. But keep in mind that last year, we still continued to experience registrations of new students through the end of August, throughout the entire month of September and into October. But as of today, and I checked our Google spreadsheets this morning, we seem to be, we only had, I think, one class that hit 26 at Warren Point. One or two classes, everything is 25 or lower. So it has been dispersed. The soft borders has had a minimal impact because it's only affected right now two move-ins to the community.
Have parents been given the option to volunteer to move schools? Has that been communicated? Why to those schools?
It has been.
Have there been takers for that?
We've had a few, but only a handful of requests to move, and most of those have been granted.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, so what I heard is that only 2 students were submitted to the soft borders, and that alleviated overcrowding? Did I hear correctly?
So far, it's 2 students. Now, what you heard is that as of today, we still have an overcrowding issue, but we've been able to avoid class sizes above 25, except at Warren Point, the 2 classes were at 26. What we need to monitor, and we monitor this on a day-to-day basis, is enrollment between now and the beginning of the school year. But also what I'm saying is, based on our experience last year, we continue to add students in September or October. So Soft Borders gives us the option of making sure that those who are grandfathered are in good shape and are in their home schools. Any new students would be assigned to one of the schools that has less enrollment. But just to be clear, and again, it's part of the referendum conversation, we continue to monitor this and do due diligence. Every day I get from Mike copies of his Google worksheets in which he takes a look at class size in every single elementary school. Right now, I think we are in good shape for now, but could that change tomorrow? It could, because soon we will enter a period of time when we have, based on last year's experience, a significant number of students enrolled. We'll see whether that happens or not.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, I know it's a sample size of 2, but it was like a shock for those people. I just want to understand, like, new residents moving into town. Like, what was the experience of new residents moving in and getting the soft board? Like, what was the reaction? Are you doing education? Like, how does that work? Did they know about it?
Usually the way it works is, we had a family move in a week ago and they asked what school the child would be attending. And so we counsel them at that time. And in most cases, we provide for the new residents a choice. Now, so that is dependent upon the distance from their home to the school. So in some cases, the parents had a choice of 2 schools. In other cases, they had a choice of 1. We had one parent who chose to have a child in one elementary school and the other child in a different elementary school, but that was parent choice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question about the verification process. I know some of the stats came up online, and I was just wondering if there's an update, and I actually had a suggestion about that for the future. So I would like to know how many people were re-verified, and what were the results of this?
Well, the process isn't over yet, so I think to put out data would be inconclusive. I know that we've gone through 2 series of letters. We are sending out a 3rd letter. I know we've had already one family withdraw from the community based on the verified residents. We have had a significant number come in with the proper paperwork, and Mike has been working with other families to remind them that the paperwork is due. So I think it's too early to reach any overall conclusion, other than it's already had an effect of removing one family from the community who did not reside here.
How many
And
residents have gone out?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
How many residents were requested to re-verify?
I don't know that number.
My suggestion is, regardless of these numbers, and I understand it's a service that costs money, is why don't we request this as part of the Genesis process, like we do now with all these dozen other forms that we have to fill out for the kids? Even every single summer, have people scan their, whatever, recent electric bill or something with the address and...
So you're saying, you see if I can understand this, that every year, the parents should re-register their kids?
Not re-register, just provide a single proof of address.
Yeah, that'll be re-registering, and a single, I mean, the registration requirements are more than just electric.
No, I
There's a number of things to do. But I think that if you, yeah, it's an administrative
Not
nightmare.
re-registering, just re-verify the address.
5,000, but someone has
I
to look at it.
understand, but everybody's doing all these forms of Genesis anyway, there's a lot of them.
Someone has to pay registration and verify it.
So what is the cost of that versus the cost of the company that we're paying, and also...
Company
how-
we're paying.
The cost of the company, and again, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but the service was, I believe, $7,500.
Yeah.
So if we look at the fact that already we've had a family withdraw, certainly the cost has already paid for itself.
No, totally, I'm totally for that, I'm not saying I'm not, I'm just saying, you know, a lot of people said, why only these families, it's just some talk that, how are these families selected, and I'm thinking if...
Okay, well, the families were selected. What occurs is verified residency uses national databases and will take the name and address of all of the residents who are attending our school and compare that with matches in databases. So
Yeah, I understand the algorithm, I have no problem with that, I totally get that.
people were selected if their residence claimed in Fairlawn does not show up and does not match other databases. So in other words, national databases may have people listed in another community, whereas the parents were claiming Fairlawn residency. So that's how the process starts.
Yeah, that's great, I'm just suggesting that we might want to take it a notch forward.
Why don't we see how this year works out with verified residents, and maybe
Because I
that
think
is
the
a
last
step.
number I heard is like 100 out of thousands.
I
don't know the number, that's why I asked.
You know, there was a number that people that were requested, most of them gave, then there's some that didn't give it, some people that, you know, were late in giving it, and I don't know the exact numbers. but
I get it,
we'll-
I'm
we'll
not
know them-
asking
we'll
for a
know them.
full-fledged re-registration, just, you know, like if it's one more form that you have to do in Genesis, it's not a terrible burden on the families, and it might help us weed out a lot of people that actually just moved out. There's people that move out
Well,
over
that's
the...
where most of the people, they come in, they register, and then they leave.
Yeah.
And then they, you know, don't tell us they left.
I know.
Like Elmwood Park or...
I know we have this problem, I'm just saying this might help alleviate it a little bit more.
I think that's a good suggestion. We look at all alternatives, and I think the last school year we did a wonderful job in terms of determining residency. We had a number of families who left the community because we proved that they did not live here. So we'll continue multiple approaches, and generally when we're exploring new technologies and new systems, the best approach is to use multiple measures and multiple strategies.
Thank you.
Right.
Ernie, I have two questions for you. Do we have a maximum number of people that are gonna be asked to verify this year? And is it gonna be, like you were saying with a database, like next year there'll be a whole different group of people? I understand what he's saying, that there's some people.
The number is based on how many were identified when the databases were compared. So I don't have that number. I can get the number from Mike and send it out to the board members as soon as I have that. In terms of moving forward, I envision this as an annual process. So, let me try to give you a typical example. My name is enrolled in the Fair Lawn Public Schools. We do a data search. I claim an address in Fair Lawn, but when we do the database search, we find that I also have an address in another community. So that is what would spark the investigation, but I can't tell you how many Mike started with. But I can find that from him tomorrow and provide it to everybody.
But I'm saying also the next year, are the same people going to keep getting this, and they're just going to work on the database? I'm just saying, because that's the question you're getting in the community, is why all of a sudden I'm being asked, and they don't want to be pinpointed as like every year the same people, but the person living next to me rents, and they don't get asked, but I get asked. So I'm just saying that is an issue I've had asked of me.
I'll check with Mike. I'll get back to you on that. I know he's in constant contact with the verified residency folks.
Thank you.
Do you have any update on the project, the architect project that you hired, that you joined on this year in the work?
He's working on it. There's no plans done. I was waiting for a resolution.
Now he's going to start the plans.
Well, he probably did preliminary.
Yeah.
So will we be able to see it? Or?
Well, if you go on the website, you pull it up, there's preliminary plans on both of them, which is only for 11 classrooms. And we want to add 14 classrooms each and stuff, so it's on the website. All the additions are on the website.
Yeah, there'll be presentations in the coming months.
Certainly before the referendum.
Yeah, well, I think so. In September, October, we'll have a presentation with architect and PowerPoint, maybe not a PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay. Any other members of the audience? Any items? Yes.
What if the referendum doesn't pass?
Back to square one.
Like, what can we do to people who don't have kids in school? Like, how can we get the word out to, like, it's the best thing for our kids to pass the referendum?
Well, whether we've done referendums in the past.
The community,
Yeah, we work with the PTAs, PTOs. There's FLAIR, which is that still around?
It's not, but it used to be in the bylaws that it could be resurrected upon necessity.
That's Fair Lawn Association of Responsible Education, and they used to help us pass budgets when we had to vote. So we'll be, doing a full blast PR among the PTAs and parents. They believe that's a good idea.
Let me add, Gene, also visiting community groups, VFWs, Rotary clubs, visiting anyone who wants to hear a presentation about it. So I think we can saturate the town with very good communication. There have been very significant upgrades to the webpage. As Ron said, a lot of terrific information is there, and we'll continue to do that as well.
Thank you. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. There'll be more information to come. Okay. Any other members of the audience? I'm asking, and if you want to speak, raise your hand now. I just got blasted on Facebook. Okay. All right. Members of the club, board.
could you just follow up with at your next PTA council meeting and find out whether or not it is in the bylaws that there can be resurrected at any time?
Okay.
Who would be on such a committee as Blair? I know it's not in the system right now, but is it anybody?
Anybody who wants. Anybody who wants to volunteer to sign. Yeah, we will went on somewhere. We'll let you know, and then just get in touch with your PTA or when it plays. I'll put you on. They're glad to put you to work, right? Okay, members of the board. Any questions, comments?
Can I do new business on this?
Whatever you want.
Okay, just a couple things. There was some fodder about band enrollment for the high school. I promised band in the high school. I promised that I would follow up on it just to.
Is it band enrollment or band?
The enrollment of students from middle school to the high school.
Not in the band though, in musical.
There was a lot, it was
education.
going into music in the high school.
Going into the band itself.
From the past 2 years ago, I was brought up from Barbara Otten and Rebecca. The problem is the schedule. Natalie would know the answer better than I do. But unfortunately, they meet like a certain time, and the kids have no choice. They had to make a choice. Either don't take a class, which they cannot take, or go to the band. And it's not, it's a mandate. It's like a state curriculum, core curriculum.
Right. I know that.
I could be wrong. I'm just
Pieces,
talking.
no, you're correct, you're talking about personal financial literacy, when that was put into place. Oftentimes, students were taking that instead of taking band to get that high school graduation requirement out of the way. We've had multiple conversations with the middle school principals and guidance counselors that students don't have to take that their freshman year. They can take band. Another concern over the years was when we were running band. And so we've tried to run it during the course of the school day, and we would get very, very low enrollment because many children were choosing to take other courses instead. So we have it most of the time now, 9th period, and we get a much, much better enrollment.
What's out there now is that no one is signing up. The word on the street is, not verifying this, I'm just telling you what the word on the street is, that they're being discouraged by guidance counselors not to go to band. And I've heard this from more than one person.
I've heard that too. It's not from band, it's from, guys said that it's from the orchestra and the other.
Yeah, apparently the guidance counselors. So I'm concerned about that. We all agree on the whole music thing, so I don't know to belabor that. But just throw it out there. You know, I work in a high school, and our financial literacy class is an online. It's accepted by the state. It's a short online class that kids participate in. It doesn't have to take up classroom space. Teachers get a small, for facilitating, hate that word, facilitating the class, you get a small stipend. Maybe that's something we can think about doing to help alleviate that. And if it is true, again, none of us should know about any type of personnel things going on here, but if it is true, a little message can be sent, because I can't speak for the board, but I'm pretty sure we're all would like to see our numbers stay strong and us to be able to have those well-rounded children that we love so much. So that's that. The other thing is,
Jeff, just let me jump in. You know, we picked up a little bit of this during the week. I've been in contact with the high school, so has Natalie. And we know we've added a course at the high school level, but we'll continue to follow up with high school staff. I mean, we have a program that is an award-winning program, but if there's a perception out there, we'll do our best to address it and answer questions that parents may have or board members.
And I know Matt Kahn and Jim Marcel were trying to get some information together for us as well.
The other one is a little bit more serious. I'm just going to go back to houses. I'm sure that a lot of us are curious, and I've heard several board members, we don't have houses in middle school anymore, and that. I'd like to understand the history and the reason why we got rid of them and our rationale, knowing what we know, to not go back to them, why there's been no discussion on only going back to houses and doing a little more with especially our younger students in the middle school in terms of their adjustment. And I brought it up earlier, the idea that rules and regulations for such different age groups are exactly the same, the expectations for behavior are the same, beginning on day one. Like you walk into that school as little 10-year-old or 11-year-old and you're just like the 8th grader, you're like the savvy veteran when you're a rookie. And I'm curious as to why we're not even talking about, as soon as possible, going back to middle schools that are in, that, how do I word this politely, that could set a stage so students who need to be more nurtured and cared for, who have more difficult times making adjustments, can do that, where we don't have that kind of program right now. So I really would like that to be addressed maybe at an education meeting. We should start talking about that. I know that other board members have spoken in favor of having houses.
So you want to discuss what happened or what's going on?
I want both. I mean, I want to know why we don't do it, and if we think it's better, or from what we understand from what we're hearing from the presentations, that houses are better, and that we used to have it and it was great. And I know that personally my mother taught in those houses, respectfully with Mrs. Wallace. And we've left it, and why are we not going back?
Well, I think we are going to go back. That's what we're talking about anyway.
3 years now, though.
talking about now.
Yeah, but that's 3-4 years from now. What are we going to do for the kids who are there now?
Raising my hand.
All right, but Mike got his hand raised first. So
Sorry, Mary. Seems like it always happens. As far as the high school thing, I don't believe that we should do a financial literacy course online for Fairlawn. I agree that it could be done at a different time, but I don't agree with it. I think there's a reason why the state put a financial literacy course in place, and I think it's I think a lot of our young people don't know anything about finances when they graduate, and I think that just philosophically, I don't believe in doing that online just to get through the high school, the graduation requirement. As far as the middle school houses, I do not believe at all that a 6th grader at TJ or Memorial are treated any differently. I mean, are treated the same as an 8th grader. I do not believe it, because teachers don't do that, administrators don't do that. There are a set of rules and guidelines, but there's a nurturing environment there, and you can't convince me that there's not a nurturing environment there. As far as going back to teams, I think we should, but I'm not like, it's not going to be done this year. It's a whole philosophy, it's a whole schedule thing. So
But then we just hired someone.
It could get done, but.
Well, Mike, I have to disagree with about your perceptions of that. I can't talk more about it.
Yes, you're right. You can. I know where you're going. So you guys can have a private.
I think I'd very much like that, and I'd like to continue to have those private conversations with our administrators.
Okay, well, it's something we can talk about. I'm not going to make a decision tonight, but I'm planning on a work session at some point. So.
And yeah, because that's the other things I had. One is we talked about having a work session about talking about mental health and things of that nature. We're going to maybe have that. I don't know when we are going to the high school to do that again. So I want to just reiterate my hope for that. And the last thing is, it's a buildings and grounds thing. I know that Warren Point put in with, I think, over 10 grand for a fan in their very, very, very hot multi-purpose room. It's my understanding that another school, however, did get that for nothing. The PTA, I'm certain, wants to use that 10 grand, wanted to use that money to replenish books and things like that for their students' classrooms, which is something that they were wanting to do, but the money was spent on the fan in a very hot room. I'm looking for the board to agree to at least give them some of that money back so they can use that money.
It was a completely different scenario. It was not the same
Which
scenario.
I sent an email to the
at all.
PTA president, she brought it up
I
to
know,
me in
but-
May. I spent an email to her, I don't have it in front of me, explaining how this other school was.
Was a kitchen or something, like someone has a kitchen or
It
something.
has a kitchen, and it generates a lot more heat, and it goes into the multipurpose room. And the multipurpose room was under-fanned, you add the kitchen in, and the heat was much more intense than it was in North Point. So, in order to alleviate that, we really weren't sure how to do that, and then we got the big fan, and it seemed like a good idea, and we talked to Tom Senko and Joanne, and they decided that was the best way to solve the problem.
All right, well, I had a try for them. I think that I would like to see them partially reimbursed for that, because whatever the reason is, it's hot.
No, it was a poor ventilation system, and it would have cost like $250,000 to have the same effect as the fan that we saw was effective at Warren Point. It was not the same situation at all.
Well, the result's the same, though. The kids were hot. It was a very temperate environment, one way or the other, whether it be the kitchen or whatever
No, I
conditions.
don't think it was the same. I think it was actually different. It wasn't hot or hot, it was actually a ventilation issue versus maybe people being uncomfortable. But they already had a ventilation system, and this was in addition to that.
Warren Point is pretty uncomfortable and pretty hot, like
But it was
unbearable.
a different scenario. I mean, it's different mechanically, different logistically, completely different scenario.
I understand that. I'm still asking for if they can be partially reimbursed that money so they can put more books in the classroom, because their money was spent on not putting books in all their classrooms for their level readers, and now they don't have as many because they had to put fan in. And you know, it would be nice, a few $1,000s would go a long way to putting more books in those classrooms. And we've spent, agreed to spend a lot of money tonight on a lot of things, and it doesn't seem like reimbursing them $3,000 so they can buy books for their classrooms is that big a deal.
They sent in three, if I'm correct, working correctly on this, and I was dealing with Joanne on this, they sent, because this was approached to us, they approached Buildings and Grounds, they sent in 3 different bids for similar fan, and they chose the highest bid. So they kind of wanted that, and the electric cost a lot to get the electric to that. So that was part of the issue, they knew that going in a little bit, because I tried to get them money. We approached the Buildings and Grounds Committee, I spoke to Joanne as the chairman, and with Tom Sanko, this is where we went. And because the electric was expensive to get the power they needed for the type of fan that they wanted. So I don't have a problem, it's up to the rest of the board, I'm just explaining to you. Again, like Brooke's saying, two different, I don't know about the situation at the other school, but I'm telling you, that's the way that was approached. So they could have wanted a different option, and they wanted this higher fan. The electric cost a lot more to get it.
Understood.
So that's, because, you know, I would never want kids to have books and stuff like that.
It's not that they don't have books, it's just they can get more current books and more level readers when the PTA typically would donate them. And because, you know, the library budgets aren't very large, and it's incumbent on what the principals are asking for, it just seems would be a nice thing for us to do for those classrooms. Because they did pay to make the environment that we're responsible for more healthy and more livable. So it seems like reasonable to give them some money.
It's not, I'm not saying it's unreasonable, but what I have a problem with, Jeff, is you, instead of discussing with anybody, just bring it up at a public meeting. Now, if we say no, we all look like heroes. If we say yes, you look like the hero. So, that concerns me a bit, okay? And I see you smiling.
It seems like a healthy strategy, no?
Well, if
What, to make us look like heels?
Yeah.
Make you
No,
look like a
it
hero?
really wasn't my intent. I remembered that, you know, when I just seen her, I brought it up.
I mean, I think you and I might have discussed it at one point too. And I think you would ask me about it, and I told you what the situation was.
That's what I was thinking.
Now, other than talking to me for 5 minutes and maybe an email, I don't remember. I don't know if he discussed it with anybody else, with Ron as chairman of Rivers Grounds, with anybody. So, I mean, you're putting this between a rock and a hard place. Now, I don't know which way to go. And I gotta tell you, it's a little annoying. It's a little bit annoying. And I know you don't care, but I just don't think it's the way you did it. I'm not saying it's a bad request, okay? I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world. But you're doing it in a way that I don't think is productive, at least.
I was just gonna say that, because the PTAs all do different things, and we're not always apprised of every single thing that PTAs do, you know, like, Millens has the, from TJ, they have that big carnival, and Millens gets a lot of money, and, you know, Warren Point doesn't have a carnival, but they have a Tricky Tray, where they raise a lot of money. Maybe we should be, because at one time, I think we were a little more apprised of some of the things that were going on. Like, I didn't know that they put a fan in either school. I don't remember seeing that as a thing for either
Yeah, it was
school.
on it.
And I didn't know you know, that it was in, well, in lieu of book, like, you know what I mean?
No, we didn't know it was in lieu of books.
That's
We
what I
just-
mean. So I think maybe, you know, there's some, you know, onus on the PTAs to sort of get to us beforehand so that we would know, you know, what their
I
choices
honestly didn't think it was a
or-
problem after I emailed the Warren Point president. She said, okay, I understand, I never heard another word. So now all of a sudden, 6 months later, it's coming up out of the blue.
Well, in fairness, I did speak to Natalie about it. I did.
And I explained.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I don't have to take, just because, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful, one board member says no, and there was an explanation from the assistant superintendent, doesn't mean that I don't have the right to bring it up, or I shouldn't go after money to help those people out. And I know that you don't feel that.
Not the way you did it, he's got the money.
Well,
Cindy.
I remember when Edison Special Ed PTO wanted to do something with their marquee out in the front. I said to them, it sounds like a great idea. We need to bring it to committee. It was brought to Buildings and Grounds and Special Ed Committee. We worked out a deal where they would fundraise and because that's the way it has to be done.
I was there, I know.
Right, but what
You guys can all
just did
scold me
right
all you
now
want, I
was
still want to
not-
get the
was-
money.
I'm worried with, number one, I'm worried about two things. Number one, I'm worried about setting a precedent, so that anytime the PTO needs something in lieu of books, they're gonna come to the board. And how can we say, well, we're not gonna do it for you, but we did it for them. We're not gonna do it for you, but we're gonna do it for them. We're gonna give you 10,000, but we're only gonna give you 12. Or $12 versus 10,000. Where do you draw the line? And I certainly don't want to take school books out of here, but I just don't like the way you did it.
All right, well, again, you
And the
can scold me all
marquee
you
was
want.
brought forward the way it should have been brought forward. And that's why we have the policies that we have, so that everybody is abreast and informed of what's going on, and we all agree on it.
Natalie.
So I think one of the practices that occurs at the schools, which Jeff and I were talking about, at least when I was a principal, the PTA president would typically approach the principal and say, you know, is there something that you would like for your school? Almost like a wish list, you know, we have this money, we fundraised, are you looking for additional technology? Are you looking for additional library books? And so often school to school is very different with what the PTA spends the money on, and it's done in conjunction with the building administration. And so I don't remember having those discussions with the board, you know, as I was a principal. It was, you know, we did this fundraising and let's go to Radburn. We all know what their fundraising efforts were for, was for their playground. You know, that was one that we were all very well aware of. But typically, from year to year, that really is how it's done, and maybe we need to just consider, is there some way to get that message across to the board members? Because it is usually sort of an extra, above and beyond type of a thing. And, you know, as Jeff said, we buy leveled readers for our students. Maybe we want more, and a bigger leveled library in the classrooms or whatever the case may be. But typically that's what happens is, in the past, it's always been sort of principals working with the PTAs and
Yeah,
talking
because
about
when they
what
want to do
needs are.
something, they go to the principal. The principal then goes to the central office says, this is how we can do it. Like with the fan, we
Right.
had to do, you had to do the electrical, you had a guy to get it.
Like with some of the other marquees in the
Yeah.
buildings,
And
exactly.
it's not just,
Right,
go ahead, go crazy, do what you want to do.
right.
Because
Because
we
some
have
of the-
responsibility to make sure that it's
Right.
properly
Right.
installed, it's up to code, it's electrician, whatever it is we have.
Right, and we might not tell you, well, we want that instead of this. I mean, it's just, we typically just tend to kind of make a decision what we think we need. So,
Talking from past experience, there is no principal who has a budget that expends 100% of that budget. At the end of the year, usually money is taken away from them, as it was this past year, to be spent towards something else. So, obviously, I want the best for the kids, but I am sure that somewhere in that budget, there is an extra $3,000 that can be spent for whatever the PTOs spend.
A brand new year coming up, started July 1. All right, anybody else, comments, questions?
Yes.
Right.
I don't know if, I assume, I hope everybody knows, and I'm gonna stand up for this. The Fernandez family, Joseph Jr., I coached Joe. They were in a horrific car accident in the Dominican Republic. Right now, he's in a coma. Right now, they're trying to get him to walk. His mother's in severe condition, the grandmother died, and the father just got released. There's a GoFundMe page on Facebook. If you can find it in your heart to donate $10, $5, they've actually gotten up to almost $75,000. The original goal was $65,000. I did get an email today from Amanda, the niece, who's kind of guiding it. The sister, the mother's sister is dispersing it. It's at least $8,000 to just start working on them. They had to come up with. So they are using the money, but if you can find it in your heart, do me a favor, just spread it around. They're a phenomenal family. I've known them for over 12 years. To donate anything you possibly can. And then hopefully they're going to try to work on getting them transported back to the United States. Right now they said they might only be able to get them back to Texas. So whatever you can do, I'd appreciate it. Please, a lot of people are on Facebook. Please spread the word. Go on the GoFundMe page. But it's one of our students and a really good family. So anything you can do, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Any other board members? All right, can I have a motion to recess in the closed session?
Second.
We are going to discuss a personnel legal issue and contract negotiations with attorney-client privilege, retention of a superintendent search firm. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Only take 5 minutes.